Hey guys, tonight we're not setting sail into the rough, chaotic world of pirates. No splintery ships, no questionable puppets disguised as parrots, and no starving sailors arguing over a soggy treasure map that's actually just spilled stew. Nope. Tonight, we're heading into something colder, wilder, scruffier, and, somehow, even more uncomfortable. The rugged world of early American mountain men, the fur trappers, explorers, and professional frostbite collectors who carved their way across the frontier. But before we wander into snow-covered valleys, bear-haunted forests, and campsites where the stew was always a little too mysterious, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is, because somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere. And honestly, 2 a.m. is the perfect time to learn why early mountain men needed skills far stranger and more surprising than trapping. Now dim those lights. Turn on a fan for that soft, white noise breeze. We're going for a gentle, wind through the pines vibe, not a full, you're lost in Wyoming simulation. Sink into your blanket, get cozy, and maybe tuck your feet in. Not because imaginary rats are coming for your toes tonight, but because we're about to talk about men who slept outdoors with wolves, snow, and questionable decisions. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it was actually like to be a mountain man? Not the Hollywood version. No shiny buckskins, no perfect braids, no clean faces. I'm talking about the real thing. Chronic dehydration, constant sunburn, unpredictable weather, and hygiene that would make even pirates say, "Buddy, please." Did they actually spend all day trapping? Was that really the most important skill? Or was survival itself, through wit, luck, humor, and absolute chaos, the real secret? Tonight, we're taking a slow, sleepy walk through the surprising realities of mountain life. The true, most valuable skill wasn't trapping, it wasn't fighting, it definitely wasn't cooking. Lord knows the stews they made could have been classified as biological weapons. No, the thing that really kept mountain men alive was something far more unexpected, something we'll explore gently as the night deepens. Imagine towering forests stretching endlessly before you, snow falling so quietly you can hear your breath bounce off the trees, campfires crackling against the silence, and lone figures trudging through the wilderness, surviving not because they were the strongest, but because they mastered a craft few people today even think about. We'll wander through moments of danger and moments of accidental comedy, because trust me, a lot of mountain man history is unintentionally hilarious. We'll look at the skills they relied on day after day, the decisions that determined whether they froze, starved, thrived, or became dinner for something with too many teeth. And why, out of everything they learned, one skill mattered more than all the rest. So, settle in. Let your mind drift to open skies, crackling fires, and rugged trails. Let the modern world fade away for a moment. Tonight, we step into the wilderness, not with fear or frostbite, but with curiosity, humor, and the comfort of your very warm, very indoor bed. Ready? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Glove on the Rifle Stock. In the quiet expanse of the frontier wilderness, long before dawn can scatter the cold shadows, a single moment hangs suspended in time. An extreme close-up reveals a weather-beaten leather glove, cracked, stiffened, and darkened by years of relentless use, resting gently on the polished wooden stock of a long rifle. The glove seems almost inseparable from the weapon, as though hand and wood have shaped one another through countless miles, storms, and silent decisions made under an unforgiving sky. The leather tells its own history. Each crease is a record of hard winters, narrow escapes, and nights spent wrapped in the brittle quiet of snow-choked forests. The fingertips are softened from steady handling, the palm worn into the shape of the stock from so many hours of carrying, aiming, bracing, and waiting. It is a glove that belongs not to a soldier, but to a mountain man, one who depends on skill, instinct, and patience more than any weapon he owns. Beneath the hand, the rifle's stock gleams with a muted polish. Not the shine of vanity, but the soft, oiled glow of something maintained out of necessity. The wood is smooth where it must be, shaped to fit the curve of a steadying palm, rounded just enough to allow for comfort on long treks through the wilderness. The metal fixtures catch the faintest hint of pale light, reflecting it in thin, icy lines. Even without seeing the full figure of the mountain man, you can sense the weight of responsibility carried in this small, focused frame. Behind the glove and rifle, the world fades into a blur of deep greens and white, a snow-covered pine forest dense enough to swallow sound. The trees stand shoulder to shoulder, draped in thick layers of frost, their branches sagging under the heavy silence of winter. A faint wind drifts through the forest, shaking loose tiny crystals of snow that drift down like cold dust. The background is soft, distant, and dreamlike, creating a gentle contrast to the sharp detail of the glove in the foreground. In the frontier, scenes like this represent more than readiness. They symbolize the thin line between life and death, not through violence, but through survival. Every choice matters, every sense becomes heightened. Every early morning begins with the same question: will skill, instinct, and patience be enough today? For mountain men, the rifle was not their greatest asset. It was merely one tool among many. More valuable than trapping, more valuable than hunting, was the ability to read the land, to sense weather shifts, track animals without disturbing them, find safe shelter before the cold turned cruel. It was the quiet intelligence of survival, the ability to understand the wilderness deeply enough to live within it rather than against it. The glove on the rifle reflects this truth. It is still, calm, deliberate. There is no rush, no panic, only the steady awareness that every movement must be thoughtful. The wilderness rewards patience and punishes carelessness. A single misstep could lead to frostbite, starvation, or simply becoming one more silent figure swallowed by the snow. But in this quiet moment, nothing threatens. The forest's danger is held at a respectful distance, blurred into soft shapes. The mountain man is not fighting, he is watching, listening, thinking. The glove rests firmly but peacefully, a symbol of readiness forged through experience rather than fear. Snow continues to fall gently, dusting the blurred pines and softening the edges of the world. The light grows slowly, rising behind the distant treetops like a whispered promise that another day is beginning. The glove remains where it is, unmoving, steady, the quiet anchor of a life lived at the edge of civilization, where survival is an art, not an accident. And in this still, silent close-up, we glimpse the truth of the frontier. It wasn't trapping that kept mountain men alive. It was calm. It was awareness. It was the quiet, watchful patience that begins each day with a leather glove resting gently on a rifle's polished stock. Chapter 2. The Mythical Mountain Man Whispers. Hey guys, welcome back to the chilly peaks of historical absurdity, where every flake of snow crunching under your feet might just be the universe's way of telling you, you forgot to pay your heating bill last month. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1831 during the heyday of mountain man lore, a time when the most crucial skill to possess wasn't trapping wily beavers, but rather, wait for it, navigating awkward social situations around the campfire. Yes, you heard that right. As you shiver under a woolen blanket, possibly a little too close to a campfire that just sneezed out too much smoke, you might find yourself asking, what's the deal with cooking squirrel over an open flame? Or, is my beard really going to help me survive? Or is it just catching leftovers? And hey, ever tried to introduce yourself to a bear while simultaneously asking for its phone number? Because, let me tell you, that can lead to some real hairy situations. But forget the dangers for a moment. Let's step around the fire and dive into the wild world where leather, musk, and the occasional whiff of regret permeate the air. Now, picture this. You're surrounded by peaks that seem more judgmental than a room full of middle school teachers at a PTA meeting. The snowflakes swirl around you in an elaborate dance, as if nature itself is mocking you, and the only soundtrack to your existence is the howling wind and the rustle of pine needles. Kinda like that slow jam playlist you forgot to delete from last summer. But if you think life as a mountain man is just rugged outdoor fun and free cheese, think again. It's a constant test of wits, guts, and the ability to resist the urge to name every squirrel Fuzzy McSqueakface. Your rugged survival skills? They better be on point, or else dinner might just turn into a lecture on the nutritional value of pine cones, which is surprisingly low. Now, let's talk about that frosted landscape you're standing on. It's pretty picturesque until you realize it's like trying to plow through a mile-long IKEA checkout line, all while being followed by a gang of wolves that probably think your jacket looks toasty. The snow glistens under the sun, beckoning you to explore its depths, almost like a delightful candy store that's also filled with impossible expectations. It's fluffy, yet treacherous. But hey, who doesn't love a little adventure with their impending frostbite? As you tramplingly squish through the fresh powder, each crunch is louder than the average "oof" you'd emit when tripping over your cat at 3 a.m. It's as if the frozen earth is inviting you to reenact a slapstick comedy scene from your favorite childhood movie, one where the hero inevitably falls on their backside, and it's just glorious. Let's not forget how essential it is to gather wood for your fire. It might sound deceptively simple, sort of like choosing a snack during a Netflix binge. But no, my friend, it's more akin to picking the winning team for the office bowling night. Each piece of firewood has its personality, as if they're auditioning for their big break on Survivor, Lumberjack Edition. Some logs crackling with pride while others sulk, weighed down by unresolved childhood memories of being turned into, well, kindling. And whiffs of wood smoke. Oh, they romanticize this drudgery, luring you into thinking you could survive just on the smell of bacon-wrapped dreams. Spoiler alert, you can't. You need actual bacon, which is quite the luxury item out here. Look around, and in this grand tapestry of existential drama, every tree might as well be an unsung hero of your dinner story. Let's take a moment to admire your attire. You've got on a coat made from the fur of some long-forgotten creature who definitely had higher aspirations, like becoming the currency of peace in a squirrel negotiation. Your hat is probably furry and likely mildly offensive to PETA, while your boots look like they were designed by someone who was going for a savage chic look, but instead got stuck in a thrift shop clearance section. Proud as a peacock, you strut through the snow, pretending you don't see the occasional eye roll from the woodland creatures. Now, let's delve deeper into your daily mischief. You'll soon realize that even nature has its own set of taboos. Ever thought about trying to strike up a meaningful conversation with the wind? Dear wind, why do you insist on blowing my hat off? Is it personal? Dealing with a gusty wind is a bit like attending one of those fun team-building retreats where everyone pretends they're into trust falls. Spoiler alert, no one catches you. They're all too busy launching themselves into laughter. As you navigate your way through this frost-bitten landscape, remember that you're not just traversing the wilderness. You're embarking on a magnificent, chaotic journey through the annals of history, where every tricky gust of wind feels like a sly wink from fate. After all, before you know it, you'll be laughing, panting, and possibly screaming into a snowdrift, while your fellow mountain men stand back, shaking their heads in reluctant admiration. Reflect on it for a moment. In the grand narrative of life, a mountain man's world isn't just about the fierceness of survival. It's a mixture of comic blunders and unexpected camaraderie, all wrapped up in the foolishness of winter's grasp. So, breathe in that pine-scented air, smile at the absurdity, and remember, there's always something mildly funny lurking right beneath the surface of every snowdrift, waiting patiently to trip you up when you least expect it. So here you are, dear mountain man, wandering in an era rich with stories yet riddled with humor. In a world where every challenge is as absurd as realizing you've ordered the wrong pizza toppings 3 times in a row. Enjoy the ride. You're about to be slapped with the history and maybe a snowball or two. Chapter 3: The Art of the Lean-To, a Mountain Man's Refuge. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into a world chillier than the last time your partner suggested a surprise camping trip. The high, frozen valleys where mountain men roamed in search of fur and adventure. It's a tale from the year 1831, where the art of survival was less about catching furry creatures and more about dodging hypothermia like a well-aimed snowball. But before we start, a quick reminder. If you enjoy this mildly absurd journey through history, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, or drop a comment about your favorite winter survival tip. Though I wouldn't recommend frostbite as a trending topic. Seriously, you might want to keep it relatable. Maybe suggest wearing 2 pairs of socks next time. So, settle in, dim the lights, crank up that fan for a chill ambiance, and get comfy. I mean really comfy. Picture this. What if your only source of heat was a campfire surrounded by rough logs? What if, instead of modern life's stressors, you faced the monumental question of whether to eat last week's trail mix or risk the wrath of a bear? Is your 4-course daydream dinner sounding a bit more appetizing now? And congratulations! You've just woken up in 1831, where sleeping in a winning combination of frostbite and pine scent is the height of luxury. As dawn breaks over the snow-laden peaks, you find yourself nestled in a lean-to shelter, an architectural masterpiece of rough logs and freshly foraged pine boughs. The aroma of pine needles mixed with the faint, smoky trace of the small fire at the center of your humble abode wraps around you like the world's roughest blanket. It's a bit like being hugged by a tree, an oddly comforting thought if you can overlook the possibility of sap. The fire crackles softly, its sound reminiscent of combining the happiness of a sizzling steak with the forlorn weeping of your life choices. Traps, steel contraptions designed to snare unwitting animals, are set around your shelter, nearly camouflaged in the pristine snow. You can't help but wonder, can you leverage these traps to catch your dreams? Or are they simply there to remind you that failure is always lurking behind every bush? Or, in this case, a snowy boulder? Now, if you're thinking this is a glamorous life, let me assure you it isn't all fur coats and firelight dodging frostbite. Daily life as a mountain man was more like a physics experiment gone wrong, mixed with a scavenger hunt. The land that provides is as unforgiving as your Uncle Roger during family Thanksgiving, always ready to critique that unseasoned turkey. Let's take a moment to visualize your morning. You stretch, feeling the satisfying ache of every muscle in your body. And then your stomach tells you it's time to forage. In your cozy, not-so-cozy lean-to, breakfast is a grand affair, consisting mostly of whatever remains from yesterday's rations. Maybe a flavorless flapjack? Or some dried jerky if you're feeling adventurous. Ever had die-hard, dehydrated meat for breakfast? It's like eating survival on a stick. But today feels different. The chilly breeze nips at your cheeks, a sharp reminder that you're several layers from actually feeling human. Sounds of the wilderness surround you, birds cheerfully chirping despite your predicament. How dare they? In contrast, your stomach grumbles audibly, sounding like a petulant bear wondering just how late it is for hibernation. And now we slide back to those steel traps, the real stars of the show. You shuffle outside to check your catches. The snow crunches beneath your boots like a bowl of cornflakes underfoot, and the sight of your traps is equally suspenseful and disappointing. You're hoping for a plump rabbit, but find instead the story of a disgruntled squirrel starring in its latest breakout role as yet another failed breakfast. Now you're left with the metaphorical equivalent of last week's leftovers. But hey, at least today's drama brings some excitement. As evening falls, your fire flickers, your mind races, and you ponder just how much more of this you can endure. Will your social media status be #StillNotDead? Because honestly, Sharing a hot chocolate with a bear would seem more inviting than enduring another night of frosty awakening. You can't help but find humor in your situation. It's like precisely what your mother warned you not to do. Enter a life of risky choices filled with bite-sized snippets of cold reality. At this point, if you're wondering how you fit into this hilariously dire adventure, just know you're not alone. Fellow mountain men, clad in leather more robust than a tractor tire, often tell tales of woeful traps, some days catching plump game, other days catching nothing but exposure therapy for their souls. Every day is a mix of bravado and desperate hope, hoping tomorrow will bring better luck. You chuckle to yourself, wondering how many less than great stories will end up as cozy legends passed around a campfire long after you've made your exit. So, as the smoke rises above your lean-to, you settle in for another snowy night and contemplate whether you're a mountain man or merely a guy enjoying a remarkable old-timey role-playing game where cold flesh meets ever-atrophying dreams. And here, the wisdom of our mountain man predecessors shines brightly. When life gives you freezing temperatures, sour jerky, and an unyielding sense of isolation, remember to take a moment to appreciate the artistry involved in both survival and humor, a lesson this era teaches through ever-chilly trials and tales.
Chapter 4. The Merriment of Mountain Man Skills. Not just traps, but tales. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're heading into the depths of rugged backwoods living, where the pancakes are more, what's a pancake, and less fluffy delight. And the most exciting event of your day is an intense staring contest with a squirrel. Yes, we're diving deeper into the lives of those dashing mountain men of 1831, where every snowflake seems determined to unite with your nose right as you're trying to trap the local wildlife. Or, survive. Now, before we plunge into the frost-bitten absurdity, let's take a moment to indulge in some virtual hand warmers. If you enjoy this journey through mildly interesting history, or just need an excuse to tune out after a long day, go ahead and hit that like button or subscribe. But, and I mean this sincerely, only if you're actually enjoying it. We wouldn't want to trap you into doing something you regret, like trying to surf during a blizzard. So, dim the lights, turn up your fan for authentic mountain chill vibes, and get comfortable. More comfortable than a bear in a hibernation lodge, preferably. Think about it. If your only means of staying warm were a fire as fickle as your ex's love life, how would you fare against the brisk currents of winter? And as you ponder that important existential question, picture yourself juggling your rations. Will it be yesterday's jerky or the last crumb of your long-forgotten flapjack? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1831, smack dab in the midst of a winter wilderness that would make even Jack Frost reconsider his life choices. Imagine the snow around you shivering under your boots like a toddler told they can't have dessert. What you might not realize yet, however, is that the highest skill a mountain man possessed wasn't just eviction notices for your local furry friends. It was the true art of storytelling, a craft more elusive than the wisps of warmth from a dying fire. Let's talk about that. While you're patting yourself down, wondering how many layers you're wearing and how closely they resemble something a raccoon would wear, here's a juicy question. Do you think these mountain men had their own version of Netflix? Well, kind of. Instead of scrolling through streaming options cozy on the couch, they swapped survival stories by the flickering light of a fire. Some way more entertaining than the "we double dog dared each other" escapades you might have had over wine at your last book club. Picture this. It's evening, snow swirling outside like it's auditioning for a role as lead dancer in a winter ballet, and you, dressed like an onion gone rogue, gather with your fellow mountain men. Stories are exchanged, tales of horror and humor, often exaggerated, about the giant bear that almost mauled your buddy, or the rabbit that somehow managed to outsmart the trap so cleverly placed it should have. Received an award for Best Screenplay. Each outrageous yarn adds warmth to your surroundings,
conjuring images of bears wearing top hats and rabbits casting judgmental glances. Yes, storytelling was the mountain man's cozy blanket, his version of a virtual hug when the temperature drops colder than a polar bear on a frozen lake. Out there, in that snowy abyss, humor became a form of survival. Because, let's be real, what's more humorous than freezing one's face off while still maintaining an air of rugged masculinity? And speaking of tales that can literally make you laugh or cry, let's delve deeper into this particular night. As stories spread like wildfire, each mountain man competes for the title of Master of Myth. One guy recalls a time he wrestled not just with the winter elements, but also with his trusty steed that decided to take a leisurely break mid-journey. You chuckle at the visual of a snow-covered horse contemplating the existential dread of its life choices, while its owner desperately hurls snowballs at it. Because nothing says warmth like a fury born from frustration, right? Then there's always the notorious delicate flower of the group. You know, the one who swears they had a pet raccoon that they had, most definitely, trained to fetch and do tricks, because everyone needs that wild card in the social dynamic. As he recounts his raccoon tales, you can't help but picture the critter donning a tiny monocle, performing circus act feats with its hands, perhaps also judging human intelligence from its lofty perch. But just as you're about to hit peak hilarity with a tale of tricky traps, and that time someone mistook frozen mud for a savory stew, spoiler, it wasn't, a chilling wind gusts outside, reminding you that while laughter is essential, so is staying warm. You all pause, glancing into the distance at the swirling storm, realizing that Mother Nature isn't just a spectator, she's a real-life plot twist, always ready to turn an exciting evening into Survivalism 101. In essence, storytelling kept the heart warmed as surely as a pile of tight-knit woolen socks. Speaking of socks, maybe it's time to rethink your fashion choice as you shuffle into that leaky lean-to interwoven with frost and the echoes of despair. But fear not. A good story can turn your plight into a grand adventure as myth and memory come together like the finest fabric to shield your body. From the cold, sure, but also from the mundanity of life slipping away into bland oblivion. As the laughter dies down and the stories meld into the smoky air, you can't help but marvel at the wild lives of those mountain men. They faced every frigid twist with a grin, while spinning tales that have somehow managed to slip through time, echoing merriment even amid the chill. Life wasn't just about the meat and fur. It was truly about weaving moments into a narrative that could last far longer than any of the trappings around them. And that, my brave adventurer, is how you become not just a mountain man, but a storyteller, a title far more valuable than any cumbersome bear trap. So, let the chill of 1831 wrap around you, comforting like a warm, albeit slightly smelly fire, as you settle in for another night filled with laughter dancing upon the winds of winter, Chapter 5. The Morning Tension of a Mountain Man's Awakening. As dawn breaks over the frost-kissed pines, a tranquil silence blankets the clearing. A peace so thick it makes you wonder if the squirrels are in cahoots with the wind to keep their antics a secret. Emerging from your cozy bedroll, the chill nips at your nose like an overzealous puppy longing for attention. But alas, the only puppy here is just the snow that seems determined to claim your toes. You rise like a reluctant specter, groggy and ready to face the day, only to be greeted by the pervasive aroma of damp pine needles, mixed with a hint of, well, let's just say earthy doesn't quite do justice. It's more reminiscent of a forgotten potato left too long in a dark corner. Ever opened a bag of old potatoes? Yes, it's that, but without the allure of being able to fry them into something delicious. Now, you might think the most dangerous part of waking up in 1831 is being mauled by a bear or grappling with slippery ground that could lead to some impressive acrobatics. Think of it as pre-hospitalization training. But no, It's actually the terrifying task of getting out of your bedroll without disturbing the carefully arranged insulation of your wool layers. Picture a creature not unlike a very disgruntled burrito, but one with soggy wrapping. So, as you fumble to relocate limbs from beneath the labyrinth of blankets and wool, imagine your companions, fellow mountain men still cocooned in their respective bedrolls, peacefully dreaming of great hunts and fewer muscle aches, while you slowly morph into a human pretzel. Is this part of the wilderness experience? You wonder. Let's take a moment to picture what these men actually woke up to. Smoky murmurings of a fire that might have been both the breakfast chef and the local arsonist, tickled by the whiff of charred remains of yesterday's bounty. Some might call it smoked meat. Others might call it regret. But before you can dwell on your culinary slogs, or lack thereof, there's your trusty camp stove, more temperamental than a three-headed dog at dinner time, urging you to coax it back to life. The first step to turning that rusty hunk of metal into a breakfast machine is atmospheric management. That's right, not fire making, but managing the atmosphere, which is just a fancy way of saying you futz around for half an hour, nearly losing your eyebrows before a reluctant flame appears. Ah, victory. But that flame doesn't just bring warmth, it also heralds an unintended performance of "wake up, everyone." Because let's be honest, getting the fire alight in a tent is basically an enthusiasm contest among friends about who can complain the loudest about being cold, while simultaneously sipping something that vaguely resembles coffee, courtesy of an ocean of boiled river water. You know, the kind of brew that tastes like a frustrated bear did a backstroke in it. Ever.
Wonder how many social faux pas a mountain man had to navigate in the morning. There's that awkward moment when one friend saunters over, still grimy and beautifully rumpled, attempting to reclaim what dignity he lost 8 minutes after stepping out of his bedroll. He might share an overly vivid recount of a dream involving a giant bear and a floral robe, leaving you questioning everything about last night's dinner. Now, it's time to pull on boots that haven't been powwowed with soap since the previous decade. Imagine a species of boot that should probably be classified as a living organism in their own right, having adopted a lovely shade of "that's definitely not leather" due to relentless mud, snow, and what might be the neighbor's leftover stew capabilities. As you hobble around, you take stock of your surroundings. The forest sings the quiet symphony of early morning, the soft rustle of critters going about their business, blissfully unaware of the morning light exposing every poor life choice you've made in your wardrobe. A fine selection of layers that at this point could easily represent a failed strategy in camouflage. But as the mist rises, painting the landscape in shades of silver and gray, there's a certain grace to this wilderness life, despite the mounting absurdity of it all. You remember those ever-important questions. What on earth did you eat for breakfast? Where has the elusive bear that swiped your rations gone? And most importantly, will you survive the day without succumbing to the awkward ice that prevented your morning stumbles from being a world record for mismanaged footwear? With your belly rumbling like a disgruntled grizzly, you start rustling through the meager rations. Is it sausage, jerky, or a mystery pouch that could potentially be a slice of historical reality, which is never truly revealed until it's too late? If history is indeed taught by dietary massacres, congratulations, you have just become a culinary student of survival. So, as you sip reluctantly on that perhaps too adventurous morning brew, you find solace in the fact that you're partaking in a saga much more robust than what it seems. Sits not just in your achy joints, but also in the laughter shared with friends, perhaps recounting their own misadventures between bites of whatever's left. And as you finally settle down to reflect on the intricate tapestry of mountain life, amidst the exaggerated parables echoing in your ears, you're left with one profound takeaway. Being a mountain man, much like modern life, might be rough around the edges, but it's certainly packed with gut-bursting laughter, stubborn camaraderie, and a pinch of frostbite. So, revel in the madness. You've still got a long, hilariously unpredictable day ahead. Chapter 6. Tensions and Trade on the Frontier. As the pale morning light spills into the crisp air like a spilled jug of milk on well-trodden hay, you find yourself face to face with your new reality. A tall Native American warrior, his face painted in the bold strokes of red and black, standing watch like a sentinel of the early dawn. With a trade musket firmly gripped in both hands, he casts a silhouette so impressive that it's almost as if Hollywood decided to film an epic showdown in your very own backyard. But there's no drama here, at least, not yet. Instead, a palpable tension hangs in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. And you, as a bewildered modern-day traveler, are suddenly struck by a barrage of questions. Did this warrior just finish a really intense game of charades? Was he also waking up grumpy like you? Or perhaps he's just contemplating the best way to negotiate a trade deal involving the world's worst jerky. You take a moment to breathe in the ambience. The smell of damp earth and wild sage wafts through the air like an invitation to a local potluck that no one asked to host. It's the kind of aroma that might rejuvenate your spirit, or make you question the contents of the last meal you had. You look around and realize the world you've stumbled into is not just an A-list action movie set, but the high-stakes fur trade era of 1831. Imagine standing there, debating whether to comment on the warrior's impressive fashion choice, or just stand still and act like you're part of the landscape. Perhaps you'll channel your inner shrub while silently hoping for a bear to ambush and shift focus. Because in this wilderness, where your existence hinges on the whims of wildlife, even a poorly timed joke could lead to a less than favorable trade arrangement. Let's talk about the realities of life during the American fur trade era, where mountain man was less about rugged good looks and more about mastering occasionally gross survival techniques. You, armed with only your 21st century knowledge, quickly realize that being a smooth-talking dealer isn't your only option here. Sure, you could promise the world in exchange for a beautifully pelleted skin blanket, but what if you forgot the historical etiquette? Would you accidentally insult the pride of a warrior by offering an atomically undersized wool sock? And as you think about these potential faux pas, you start to picture the first impressions of early mountain men. One might say that these pioneers of the West had mastered several essential skills: trapping, hunting, and an inexplicable gift for telling tales that could convince a rattlesnake it was actually a beloved pet. But surprisingly, the most valuable skill they possessed? It was not hunting or pining for the return of fresh fruit. No, folks, it was negotiating. Let's imagine rolling into a trading post in the middle of the wilderness, the air thick with smoke and rumor, and everyone patiently waiting to barter their goods. You might think this would be an excellent moment to quietly observe a fascinating historical event unfold. But no, you're stuck behind a rickety wooden counter next to Old Man Jenkins, who insists that he was the reigning champion of skunk skinning. Why is he shouting? It's the only way he can ensure that you know that the skunk's pelt was top-notch, even if the smell suggests otherwise. Suddenly, you find yourself thrust into negotiations over a slightly weathered blanket that may or may not have been a former half of a fancy living room set back in the good old days of the late 1700s. Less than pristine, mind you. All while surrounding vendors weigh their merits and resign themselves to a life fueled by vigorous belief in their own yarn-spinning abilities. As you stand there, bickering about price reduction and palette choices, you notice our stoic warrior out of the corner of your eye. He gives you a knowing nod, definitely a nod of respect, or perhaps he's just silently judging your choice of military-grade musket from the last flea market. And then it hits you. Maybe trading was less about weighty negotiations and more like an awkward dance where everyone keeps stepping on each other's toes. Imagine the warrior divinely laughing within as you willingly trade away your dignity in the barter exchange for someone else's leftover dog sled gear. You want to call out to him, "Hey, is this really the key to legendary trading skills?"
But alas, your modern-day grasp of non-verbal cues comes up short in this historical conundrum. However, amidst the clatter of wooden carts and mounted trades, there's something soothing about shared mischief. Perhaps they found comfort in laughter, which, let's be honest, is generally what got everyone through long, arduous days filled with lurking dangers and questionable food choices. And yet, in this moment, realizing that negotiation transcends time is both humbling and hilarious. Because in the end, whether you're a modern shopkeeper juggling credit cards or a mountain man bartering for furs, the skill set might be interchangeable, just with a lot more live animal encounters and way less Wi-Fi. As you take one last look at the warrior standing sentry, you wonder if you'd just entered a life where morality and ethics were tossed into the trading pot, alongside that infamous pot of stew no one can quite identify. With the sun now creeping higher in the sky, illuminating the bizarre staging of what was once a rough wilderness camp, you realize there's more going on here than meets the eye. So, grab your invisible musket and step forth into a world where history and hilarity collide, forging a path toward life lessons that surely stem from bad deals and better stories.
Chapter 7: Hands, Guns, and the Art of Communication. So, imagine yourself tranquilized by the serenity of the open wilderness, when suddenly you find yourself at the center of an enchanting yet slightly confusing moment. One of your hands rests on the smooth wood of the rifle stock, a comforting, sturdy companion, while the other is raised in a non-threatening gesture, not quite a peace sign and definitely not a wave, but more like a polite thumbs up if peace negotiations had taken a turn for the lost and awkward. There you are, trying to convey that you're just a totem of social awkwardness in the middle of nowhere, hoping that the legendary skills you've read about don't require actual shooting. As the sun peeks over the rugged mountains, its early rays playing a game of tag with your face, you start to notice the sheer artistry of the moment. This isn't just a meeting of cultures, it's a dance, more loopy than a quick-step, and you're perfectly misaligned. In this very moment, at the peak of the American fur trade era in 1831, you realize that the most valuable skill a mountain man could possess was not hunting or wilderness survival. No, it was the art of negotiation. Yes, the ability to chat up a potential enemy while clutching a lethal weapon is the underrated superpower of the frontier. Picture yourself channeling all that 21st century charm you've carefully cultivated online. Have you ever attempted to explain a technology glitch to an elderly relative? That confused yet patient nodding? That's what this encounter feels like. It's a metaphorical scramble of all your mediocre conversational tactics being rubber-banded together, waiting for the chance to either catch fire or freeze up in horror. From the corner of your eye, you try to gauge your new friend's temperament. Is he contemplating a philosophical dialogue about the benefits of mutual cooperation? Or is he just thinking about what's for dinner, a dream combination of succulent roasted meat and the sweet readjustment of your perception of a safe crossing? Would a smile truly have worked better than an awkward thumbs up? Time might tell, just as long as that time doesn't involve fleeing in terror. Now, let's talk about your rifle for a moment, shall we? Sure, it looks shiny and deadly, but did you know it also serves an unspoken secondary function? It's a brilliant prop. In the face of potential danger, that sturdy barrel could act as a makeshift club, an anchor point for your rambling existential questions, or, let's be honest, a great conversation starter if you forgot to brush your teeth. Speaking of toothbrushing, the Native Americans had a fascinating way of maintaining oral hygiene. Rather than minty toothpaste, they relied on the natural wonders of nature. Imagine someone coming up to you with a handful of mint leaves while you frantically look for your dental floss, which you pray isn't a piece of woven wood from last week's firewood. Chores. At this historical juncture, The woodland equivalent of a breath mint is chewing on twigs. Was there a particular pine cone that acted as the bamboo toothbrush of the time? It makes you wonder whether your modern dietary choices could be substituted for twigs. Suddenly, that salad doesn't seem as infused with opportunity as it once did. And as time stands still in this historical tableau, you're far from a meandering philosopher. Instead, you're more like a deer in headlights, partially paralyzed with the yearning to communicate. And yet your instincts push you to embrace this very awkward dance of half gestures. What you lack in verbal finesse, you hope to compensate with earnest eye contact and the kind of open mouth that looks more like a fishhook than a movie star. Eventually, as you stand there contemplating unanswerable questions about life in this frantic and chaotic era, you begin to notice the harmony of the scene, the laughter that bursts forth from nearby traders, an echo swirling through the trees chases away your worries. Can negotiation and skillful diplomacy somehow be woven together like stories around a campfire, filling the air with the aroma of fragrant pine? And isn't that quite amusing? You start to chuckle, picturing life here as a sitcom handcrafted by nature. Of course, finesse in communication was paramount. Everyone here was playing a part. The Native Americans were experts in their craft. You could sense the centuries of practice behind every gesture, every moment of silence, spoken and unspoken. They understood that negotiating over furs and pelts wasn't merely a transactional exchange, but an art form laced with tales and legends, infused with the aroma of smoke and skillful craftsmanship. Imagine the collective sigh of relief when someone finally acknowledged that the muskrat pelt really didn't match the winter coat. You know, you really could get a better value out of the gorgeous raccoon skins if you'd just bagged a few more squirrels, you might say, all while trying to sound astute, like one of those financial advisors you overheard at a family barbecue. And, let's be honest, who knew that sharing financial advice was universal back then too? Your imagination runs wild with confrontational banter that both educates and entertains. Gradually, as the sun climbs higher and you contemplate the important role of humility, humor, and a good negotiation tactic in this wilderness labyrinth, you find yourself ushered deeper into history's embrace. There's something beautiful about recognizing that though traditions wax and wane, the whimsical art of communication is timeless, regardless of your chosen method. And then it strikes you. The mountains around you are laughing too. It's an encouraging thought, a push to break free from uncertainty. Just like the mountains, life's uncertainties will always be there, but so too will the infinite opportunity to engage, connect, and cultivate laughter into every encounter, even the most bewildering ones. So take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and let the serenity wash over you. Because this journey through time is just beginning. Chapter 8. The Calculating Gaze of Fate. As the sun casts a sleepy golden haze, picture this. You're nestled in the heart of the wild frontier, surrounded not by the comforts of a soft mattress, but rather the glorious embrace of your rugged, charred campsite. Ah, nothing says relax quite like sleeping on the ground with the subtle harmonizing scent of campfire smoke mixed with, let's not mince words, a rather unfortunate whiff of cooked squirrel. Yes, the aroma is so enchanting you could market it under the exotic name of Eau de Wilderness. But hold your horses. Your moment of blissful repose is abruptly interrupted. In the corner of the camp, a figure emerges. Let's call him Jake. Picture him with a smirk that could cut glass and eyes as sharp as the blade at his side. He's the kind of guy who could measure the contents of your soul with a single glare, and that's saying something since you've been carefully curating your collection of mismatched socks back home. Is he a traitor? A potential friend? Or is it possible he's debating whether you'd pair well with roasted potatoes for dinner? The suspense thickens. Jake's gaze is pinballing between your modest pile of belongings, an old canteen, a tattered map,
and a fur coat that seems to have seen better days, while he sizes you up like you're the last bag of chips at a family gathering. You can almost hear the thoughts racing through his mind. Is this fellow a skilled hunter, or just someone who can light a fire with a single sneeze? Let's talk about those possessions for a moment. Your meager equipment evokes admiration two ways. Firstly, how on earth did you manage to make everything look so endlessly mismatched, like a misguided thrift store in a survival movie? And secondly, how are you supposed to defend yourself against a man who looks like he could carry a mountain goat and painted a lovely shade of plaid in his free time? The intricacies of life on the frontier were indeed fascinating. Every man worth his weight in bear pelts carries a tacky cologne, you may think, slightly self-deprecating. And who wouldn't enjoy a friendly chat with a potential adversary with a flair for creative insults? Would a high five, of all things, be entirely too forward? Maybe a playful finger guns gesture, just to let him know you're not a total square. Yes, nothing says, "Please don't eat me," like a classic two-finger shooter move. But as Jake continues his silent assessment of your lifestyle choices, the air shifts. There's a whimsical tension comparable to the feeling you get right before you hit send on a slightly embarrassing text. You can feel your confidence straining under the weight of being a novice, standing by as the intricacies of frontier flair hang around your neck like an unwanted scarf someone knitted at a poorly timed holiday party. Do your possessions actually measure up against the backdrop of this vast wilderness?
To the naked eye, perhaps not. To a keen evaluator like Jake, however, your entire existence is a wild tapestry to examine, each frayed edge and half-baked decision telling a story. What mountain man doesn't dream of roaming free, unfettered by societal norms and obligations, yet equally terrified of turning into an accidental stew for a rogue pack of wolves? It's a delicate balance between grandeur and the awkwardness of that one time you tried to impress someone by cooking something exotic on a camping trip, only to have it explode in a rather unceremonious fashion like a small volcano. It's almost laughable, really. Here you are, armed with wisps of threadbare wisdom gathered from old tales, and at the mercy of a fellow bear wrestler who might just be reading your soul like a bestseller. Did you ever think when you woke up in your own time, wanting to learn more about the past, that this rendezvous would be on the menu? It's like stepping into the pages of a weird novel, where frontiersmen discuss life while trying not to roast each other alive under the sun's invisible yet scalding judgment. As the day drifts lazily onward, there's a certain charm in this wilderness tableau. The crackling flames draw not only the attention of individuals in their respective corners, but also curious critters, perhaps looking for scraps or a momentary distraction from being hunted. Suddenly, a rustle. Is it a wild bear? A crafty raccoon? No, it turns out to just be a startled squirrel contemplating its life choices. How either of you managed to survive this long while sharing the same plot of land is a mystery. But here you are. Wonders never cease. That's frontier life for you, endlessly entertaining and bewildering. Eventually, Jake turns his piercing gaze from your camp to the broader horizon. His eyes glimmer with purpose. This dance of survival is more than a mere contest of bravado. It's a delicate art. In that instant, you realize the sheer absurdity of it all. A solemn yet comedic performance where every interaction comes adorned with laughter, tension, and the possibility of unwarranted companionship. With a shrug and a shared laugh, a comradeship blossoms amid the tactical glares, transforming the tension into an unexpected mixture of frustration and humor. Every word at once tinged with mischief and a dash of understanding. It's almost nauseating how you both could find humor even in your most pitiful possessions, like comparing the durability of fur langurs to a pair of unfortunate sandals lost to the wilderness. In the heart of this chaos, aptly balancing between negotiation and camping disasters, you settle into this magnificent spectacle of camaraderie and confusion. And as you breathe in the cleansing whirlwind of your new, chaotic surroundings,
you can't help but feel a sense of ease. It's a time when worrying about mishaps becomes part of the charm of the wild, where survival sometimes calls for a hearty laugh and a shared meal, regardless of whether it's human, squirrel, or the remnants of a questionable stew. How quaintly brutal life can be on the frontier. And behold, this is merely the beginning of your thrilling journey through the mountains of time. Chapter 9: The Mountain of Misfits. Hey guys, welcome back to our ever so slightly absurd slice of history. Tonight we're delving into something chillier and more rugged than your last attempt at assembling IKEA furniture on a Sunday. The riveting world of mountain men in 1831. Yes, the same year when folks were out to trap beaver pelts faster than our parents could trap us into a weekend family gathering. And isn't that just the kind of thrilling adventure we aspire to? Before we plunge headlong into snowy escapades, I kindly invite you to like, subscribe, and comment, only if you genuinely enjoy this, of course. We wouldn't want to pressure you like that awkward moment at your cousin's wedding when they ask if you found the one. So, dim the lights, put on a fan, because a gentle breeze is delightful, unlike the waves of overwhelming scent wafting from our hunters, and let's get comfy as we journey into the wilderness. Have you ever wondered what it was like to shiver so hard that your teeth could probably chop wood? Or how to navigate a life shrouded in an endless fog of pine trees while being horrendously lost? Maybe you've thought about how you'd fare in a world where the phrase personal grooming simply meant hope for the best and pray no one tries to sit too close to you? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1831, the year when beards went wild and bathing became just a broad theoretical concept discussed around the campfire, alongside how to make squirrel jerky taste like something other than squirrel. Now let's set the stage, shall we? Imagine this. You're trudging up a narrow, snow-dusted trail, the type of path that nature decided to cover in a light sprinkle of frost, as if it were gearing up for an Instagram moment. Your heavy leather pack feels like it could rival a boulder in weight, and resembles something an overzealous raccoon may have scrounged up at a discount store. The sun is making a valiant attempt to pierce through the dense canopy above, carrying a golden hue that wouldn't dare glow on a Monday morning in your office. And then, listen closely. Do you hear that soft squish of snow underfoot? It's like the earth murmuring, "Why are you here? Can't you find somewhere more comfortable, like, I don't know, a couch?" But no, you march forward, gripping the straps as if they were a lifeline, while pondering the existential question, why did they call this a mountain man skill? Have they ever tried to balance on a log? As you navigate this rugged terrain, your outfit is likely whatever tattered clothing you could cobble together, a hodgepodge of fur and fabric that screams, "I like the outdoors as long as I don't have to sleep in it." Add to that a pair of boots that would make a lumberjack weep. They're more than a little worn, likely with enough holes to host a family of very enthusiastic and ambitious mice. Now, speaking of hunting skills, you might expect our intrepid mountain men to be elite trappers. After all, isn't that what this wilderness is for? A wild game extravaganza. But hold your horses, or beaver pelts, whatever you're into. The most sought-after skill often wasn't trapping. Nope, it was none other than the art of conversing with fellow mountain men, because nothing says survival quite like a good chat by the campfire. Imagine sitting there with a fellow mountain man, swapping tales about unforgettable bear encounters, while secretly trying not to bring up that time you mistook a squirrel for a mate. Yet, despite this camaraderie, the realm of the mountain man didn't come without difficulties. Imagine how many moments of awkward silence it took to have them carve tales out of actual tree bark. And here you are, trying to eavesdrop on men named Buck and Slim as they debate the finer points of squirrel cuisine, like what spices to avoid if cooking in a desperate, starving panic. Does anyone even know what sage looks like? It's a ticking time bomb of culinary disasters waiting to happen. And can we talk about navigation for a second? On the one hand, there's the sheer beauty of nature and its majestic trees, rivers, and mountains. On the other, You're guaranteed to get lost the moment you step off the path. Honestly, this could potentially end in a big, "Well, folks, here's where I went wrong" speech delivered to an audience of, you guessed it, a curious family of raccoons looking for a midnight snack. But hold tight, because things get even funnier. The hunt for comfort turned into an epic saga, a sort of Survivor Mountain Men edition. Your chances of finding solace were about as likely as a one-eyed rabbit winning a staring contest with a fox. You've got one foot in a muddy stream, while the other is balancing precariously on what appears to be a hidden anthill. Who needs an enemy when Mother Nature herself is giving you the proverbial middle finger? Speaking of the quirks of it all, why is mountain cuisine a nice way of describing survival snacks? Your choice of sustenance is now limited to whatever's drifting by on the unappetizing menu. Sure, the average person can get through an outdoor experience by stocking up on granola bars, but a mountain man? Well, he's munching on something that might have been lunch yesterday, or merely part of a nutritional experiment gone wrong. And there you have it, a blend of camaraderie, culinary challenges, and navigation errors that transcend generations, or, at the very least, become fodder for amusing camping stories shared years down the line. Ideally among those who recognize the fine art of cooking over an open flame. Because if there's anything you should take away from tonight's wild jaunt through the paws and paddles of 1831, it's this. Life on the frontier was less about being a rugged individualist and more about learning how to bond over a shared penchant for mishaps, laughter, and, most importantly, adjusting your expectations accordingly. So as you settle deeper into this amusing landscape, remember, this is merely the tip of the iceberg, dear listener. The journey through the mountains holds stories even wilder than those in this snowy saga. Hold on to your hats. It's going to be a bumpy, laughter-filled ride into history. Chapter 10. The Majesty of Mistakes. Hey guys, welcome back to another wild ride through the whispers of history. Tonight we're diving deeper into the 1831 life of mountain men, where every oversized beard looked like it had a family of raccoons living in it, and where advanced culinary skills involved knowing which rocks had the best moss for seasoning. Yes, the same year when folks out on the frontier were busily ensuring every squirrel knew whose territory was whose. Before we set off on our journey through the mountainish doodles of the past, I kindly suggest you like, subscribe, and maybe comment, but only if you truly feel inspired. We wouldn't want to pressure you like that awkward silence when someone realizes they've accidentally chewed their cousin's ear off in a thrilling game of who can hold their breath the longest. So, dim the lights, lean back, and perhaps put on a breezy fan. Because let's face it, this history stuff is going to get warmer than an overly friendly campfire. Ever thought about how snuggling next to a pile of smelly pelts might be considered an act of love? Or how the only technological marvel of the day was the wheel, and even that was just newly accepted and still might occasionally run away with your pack mule? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1831, the golden age of mountain men. Imagine waking up in a world where beards and grime were the height of fashion, and the term self-care only meant not getting too lost while your neighbor took a 10-hour nap. Now let's just take a moment to absorb our surroundings, shall we? Picture a panorama of vast, untouched landscape where rolling high plains meet distant peaks, and down in the midst of all this serenity, two small figures march like determined ants up the slope. Their silhouettes look like they took the quiet quitting trend straight to heart, moving laboriously through a world that couldn't care less whether they made it to lunch or not. Look closer. Underneath their absurdly oversized wool trousers that probably once belonged to a sheep with high hopes, there are a pair of boots that could tell stories, mostly about how they regretted that last mud puddle. Each step betrays a soft squish, like a melody of unhappy gurgles, perhaps crying out, "Why are we here?" The answer? Motivation was as elusive as good hair products, but bear pelts were definitely in high demand. So forward they trudged. As you accompany our pioneers, allow your senses to reel.
Can you smell the wood smoke mingling with the invigorating pine air, laced with an obligatory touch of something? It's familiar, but not quite right. That's probably just the scent of a recent bear encounter, or worse, last month's fine dining experience. Kudos to whoever thought that leaving leftovers out in the wild was a good idea. Perhaps you'd like to imagine trying to use beaver lard as a kind of lotion. It might have been working for the men of the era, but unless your skincare routine is taking you down the rabbit hole of animal byproducts gone wild, you'll probably want to stick to moisturizer that doesn't have 4 legs and a tail. After all, nothing says classy like pulling a full-body lather while praying a bear doesn't think you smell tasty. Let's talk about social life. It sounds idyllic, right? Bonfires, stories, and a rigorous debate over how much salt is too much for squirrel jerky. But hold on. What if your biggest social faux pas was accidentally hitting on a man named Slim, who was more than just a hairy fellow? We're talking a whole league of misfits huddling around campfires, discussing the latest hiking disasters, and sharing gossip while figuring out which tree makes a suitable bathroom. And the conversation? It's deep. Ever been at a party where the group is on a heated quest of what's the best way to cook a rabbit? Spoiler alert, it usually devolves into a surprisingly competitive game of how much fur can we leave on it? Meanwhile, 200 feet away, a squirrel is judging you with beady eyes, probably because you dropped the last of the pemmican. Moreover, let's bring up navigation, shall we? You'd think that 2 mountain men with all their expertise could maneuver their way through the rugged expanses without losing half a week bumping into trees and blindly blaming the sparkly shadows on sugar-infused dreams. Alas, every wrong turn leads you to an impromptu survival seminar on how to say, "I should have brought a map," surrounded by sheep who wouldn't mind judging you with their unamused bleats. As night settles over the mountains, the landscape transforms into an intimidating expanse. Chilly breezes sweep through the camp, and the cold settles in like an unwanted family member. Suddenly, your cozy sleeping bag begins to resemble a cold, dark tomb. With the echoes of distant howls ringing in your ears, you layer yourself under your meager blanket made of dreams and an ironic number of beaver pelts. And here's the kicker. If you're yearning for comfort in this setting, well, you might as well be a chicken trying to use a salad fork. It's all a bit of a joke between nature and common sense, really. Every time you fumble for a snack, it's surely there, nestled in the warmth of your own belly button fuzz. After all, you wouldn't want grizzly bears showing up for dinner uninvited. So now, as you huddle down, comfy in the chaos of mountain man life, just know this. It's more about the whole experience of community mishaps, culinary disasters, and a hearty laugh, more than the singular pursuit of fur and hunting. Because everyone knows that whether you're skinning a beaver or swapping stories, the wilderness is just one grand comedic mess after another. And oh boy, isn't that a wild ride?
Chapter 11. The Subtle Art of Breathable Panic. Hey guys, tonight we're scaling new heights, quite literally, as we dive into the world of mountain men in 1831. Picture this, a place where every treacherous incline feels like a racetrack for your sanity, and your trusty mount, let's face it, probably a stubborn mule, has the same level of enthusiasm as a cat in a bathtub. But before we start our ascent into the wild and wonderful mishaps of these rugged heroes, do me a solid and like, subscribe, and comment on this video if you enjoy the journey. No pressure though. I wouldn't want to sound like that awkward family member who asks if you still need more cranberry sauce when you've already gotten 2 ladles full. You do you, my friend. Now, let's set the scene. Have you ever found yourself mid-climb, heart racing, and suddenly thought, did I leave the oven on? Or maybe you pondered whether making scrambled eggs instead of porridge was your biggest life mistake thus far. Imagine a time when anxiety wasn't diagnosed. It was just a Tuesday afternoon. What grand worries rustled through the minds of mountain men? Was it, is this bear glaring at me because I've insulted his intelligence? Or did I just mix up my snacks? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1831, atop a rocky incline, surrounded by the kind of scenery that makes poets weep, and probably rocks toss themselves about in jealousy. One of our mountain man pioneers stands there, sweat trickling down his bearded chin, staring intensely enough to read the thoughts of passing clouds. But what's he listening to? Intrigued? Well, let's find out. Let's talk about listening, shall we? When you're halfway up a mountain, every rustle, creak, and chirp turns into a dramatic cliffhanger. Our hero pauses mid-climb, his breath puffing like an old steam train in a heated standoff. The chill in the air wraps around him tighter than a grandmother's hug, uncomfortably tight. Eyes squinting, he listens. Is it the wind? A mountain goat? Or his own internal monologue spiraling into panic? As he straddles the precipice of existential crisis, he realizes it's not the height that's making his stomach flip. It's the sound of an actual river rushing below, which could mean the townsfolk could be just a day's trek away, throwing a welcome party or potentially a "please don't steal our bears" protest. Both sound thrilling in their own right, wouldn't you say? What's it like to rely solely on your hearing? It's akin to attempting to find the person who accidentally texted "I love you" to the entire group chat. You listen intently, ready to interpret every rustle of the fabric of life. But alas, it usually turns into more ear-squinting and nose-twitching, like you've just spotted the last bear claw pie at the local bake-off. And let's not forget the aromatic chaos swirling around him. It's a symphony of scents, damp earth mixed with fresh,
Pine that somehow hints of desperation, and a hint of yesterday's dinner, which might just be clinging a little too eagerly to memory. Ever wonder if mountain air is really just a polite way of calling it the scent of regrets and badly cooked rabbit stew? Our brave climber is breathing this all in like it's the finest vintage wine, knowing full well that the true sustenance of life is balancing survival instincts against the culinary nightmares he's bound to face once the sun sets. So, what's with all this fuss over the most valuable mountain man's skill? Is it trapping? Bear wrestling? No, my friend. The real talent lies in how to navigate social interactions in the wild. In a world where Netflix and chill translates to "let's sit on this rock and avoid getting eaten," the stakes could not be higher. Picture our mountain man, pausing from his ascent, contemplating how to make friends when camaraderie looks suspiciously like shoelaces tied to a passing grizzly. What's the secret code to decipher this isn't a bear trap? Should I whip out my best squirrel joke next to a man who exclusively eats jerky for breakfast? Am I encroaching on their territory? Or is it just every tree in Idaho that seems to have a name now? The mountain life, fraught with these precious moments of hesitation, is filled with potential faux pas. A misinterpretation of a friendly growl might lead to a stern lecture on territorial boundaries. Or worse, a high-speed chase involving 2 confused men, 3 squirrels, and 1 overzealous grizzly, just wanting to enjoy a quiet evening. As our daring climber inches closer to the pinnacle of this rocky slope, he understands that it's merely a dance of fate. The true art of mountain manhood is not just about the resilience to persevere through wild landscapes, but rather navigating the convoluted maze of friendships and misunderstandings. Now, if only he could find a way to add humor to every cringe-worthy moment, perhaps he'd elevate the whole ordeal into something resembling stand-up comedy. Because really, nothing bonds tough men more than shared laughter. And as he catches his breath and finally spots his destination, a rocky lookout overlooking endless vistas, he realizes that, combined with unyielding survival skills and an amusing knack for social blunders, he may very well crown himself the king of mountain men. Yes, the real treasure of the mountains is merely the stories, and let's hope no one ends up as dinner for a particularly disgruntled bear. Ah, the wild,
where every ascent is laced with a recipe for comedians, disaster, and a dash of triumph. Who wouldn't want to live in such absurd harmony?
Chapter 12. Bill, the nebulous connoisseur of muddy banks. Hey guys, tonight we're standing knee-deep in the elements, learning every little facet about mountain men and their leisurely antics through the muddy banks of 1831. Because what's more tranquil than finding yourself contemplating the hazards of nature while looking like you just escaped a particularly rough sheep shearing? But first, do me a solid. If you find yourself giggling, snorting, or perhaps picturing that over-enthusiastic family member diving headfirst into a pile of laundry, like I am, you know what to do, like subscribe and comment away. But only if you actually enjoy what you hear, no pressure. It's like asking a cat to take a bath. You'll get half-hearted compliance and a bunch of complaints. Now, take a deep breath, let that cozy blanket wrap around you like protective layering from the existential dread of life decisions, and let's fling ourselves into the heavy boots, or rather muddy boots, of Mountain Man Bill. Imagine yourself squatting at the edge of a river so frothy and fierce that you might as well be standing next to a caffeine-fueled hippo trying to make a splash at a pool party. Seriously, have you ever considered the thought that this robust river might be harboring secrets more baffling than the guy down the street who insists on putting pineapple on pizza? And just how did his last adventure go? Did he navigate this river, or did it navigate him? Congratulations, you've just woke up in 1831, a year when everything was both an adventure and a trip to the dentist was more frightening than any bear you may encounter. Our friend Bill stands on the muddy bank where the rapid waters tumble with all the fury of a disgruntled toddler who just lost their favorite toy. He's rugged, adorned in buckskins, resembling a particularly rugged piece of furniture in an overly rustic cabin. Can you hear the roar of the river? It sounds almost like a chorus of angry bees, but like the type of bees that have had too much honey and a bad attitude. What's the first thing that strikes you as fascinating about Bill? His hair, perhaps? Perfecting the art of unkempt, he could rival any lumberjack on a bad hair day. Seriously, it's like he wrestled a porcupine and lost spectacularly, yet still managed to score massive points for effort. If you pressed him to take a selfie for the family portrait, he might just stare at you blankly, contemplating the significance of modern technology while fully aware he couldn't recycle the wood from his old cabin to charge a phone. Let's talk about that river and the choices it presents. Is Bill that daring soul who sees the potential of fishing and instead just catches a severe case of regret? Or perhaps he's navigating the inevitable emotional wrestling match with the current, pondering if bringing back an irate fish counts as bringing home the bacon. It's fine. I might not be a proficient fisherman, but who wouldn't appreciate a fish with an attitude? He might muse with an exaggerated gaze, reflective of a philosopher caught in a monologue about the deep questions of life, like why the stream smells faintly of something resembling burnt toast. The rush of the water fills his ears, guiding him with a persistently soapy soundtrack that rivals the latest chart toppers. It's a remix of nature, a soothing combination of babbling, splashing, and the occasional flop of something overly ambitious trying to jump from one rock to another. Imagine being in awe of what lies beneath the water's surface as he squints into the frothy void, convinced he might just glimpse an old boot left behind by a hapless adventurer, or perhaps a long-gone fish trying to escape the monotony of life on land. And the scent. Let's not forget the bouquet of earth and pine intermingled with something that might as well have been last week's dinner washing down the bank. Imagine, if you will. It's like sniffing the air at an extravagant dinner party shortly after the pot roast went awry. Hints of meat, despair, and vague memories of what carnivorous dreams might be like. A true gourmet feast. As Bill contemplates his next move, a sudden inclination strikes him with the clarity of a lightning bolt. He's not just resting by the river. No, this is his version of me time. Packed with the philosophical questions of residence in a world where potato chips are a myth
and social interactions are rife with potential misunderstandings that might involve bears, Bill is having an internal crisis, akin to the modern-day dilemma of choosing between eating leftover cold pizza or attempting to microwave some overcooked kale. Suddenly, he bursts into a chuckle, a sound echoing off the muddy banks like a clumsy echo trying to find its way home. Just moments ago, the river was his battleground, and now it might just be his audience. He thinks to himself, "Should I practice my best? I may not have fished today, but I'm very charismatic, face for the next passing traveler. What would they think of my dedication to muddy aesthetics?" And therein lies the most valuable lesson Bill has learned from this robust river experience: social skills. Because let's face it, being a mountain man isn't just about wrestling bears or trapping squirrels. It's about getting out there and meeting new faces, whether they be curious travelers, fellow adventurers, or the inquisitive bouquet of pungent flowers that bloom in the spring. This is where his life gets interesting, because when you stand beside capricious waters, you can't help but wonder how to translate all this into conversation fodder that doesn't involve a literal bear with a penchant for snacks. As he steps back, mud squishing between his toes like a poor choice of footwear and a reluctant new friend, he reminds himself that, much like the river, life's surprises often lead you where you least expect. And it's moments like these that weave the fabric of his tales, the comedy of errors that makes surviving the mountains feel less like a solitary struggle and more like an outrageously hilarious group project with nature itself. So, as the frothing river roars its secrets, we'll leave Bill there, muddy and slightly rumpled, adorned by the mountain like a peculiar statue, forever caught mid-giggle, ready to share his next snack-sized tale about not just hunting for food, but quite literally trapping the laughter of life. And that, dear listener, might just be the best catch of all. Chapter 13, The River's Roar, a mountain man adventure awaits. Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into the frothy chaos of rivers as turbulent as your last online shopping experience. Sure, we're talking about 1831, when mountain men like our buddy Bill were out there, knee-deep in wilderness and allegations of hygiene. Picture this: your first chance to practice swimming in a river that seems intent on auditioning for the role of nature's most unforgiving waterslide. But first, let's be real. If you find yourself chuckling, face-palming, or picturing Aunt Edna's last attempt at using a potato peeler, what a tragedy, you know what to do. Like, subscribe and share your thoughts. Only if you actually enjoy what you hear, of course. It's like convincing a cat to wash its feet. Good luck with that. So, let's dim those lights like they're in an overly dramatic play where someone just revealed an exceedingly dull family secret. Go ahead and snuggle into your couch or bed, or, if you feel particularly adventurous, a pile of laundry. Just make sure whatever you're resting on is more stable than a jiggly dessert at a talent show. Now, let me toss some questions your way to stitch together a funky quilt of curiosity. Ever wondered how you'd keep a beard so majestic you could lose your car keys in it while navigating a swift river? Or pondered how many types of fish you'd accidentally confuse with an old boot? How did mountain men convince themselves that washing was for city folks? And seriously, if you were required to catch your own dinner, would you opt for fishing or just an overcooked piece of kale left unattended? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1831, a year filled with its share of Wild West adventures and questionable fashion choices. And right here, at the edge of a bitterly demanding yet spectacularly beautiful river, we meet our rugged friend Bill, who embodies the challenge of the wild like a bear wrestling with a rain-soaked tarpaulin. Imagine stepping onto the muddy banks next to this violent river, frothing and tumbling with a gusto worthy of an over-caffeinated woodchuck on a sugar high. To say it's roaring is a bit of an understatement. It's the cacophony of nature, blending like a bad orchestra left unsupervised and led by wild winds. Think of a blender stuck on muddle mode, complete with bubbling symphony of grumpy fish who might just be contemplating existential crises of their own. As Bill stands there, rugged in his buckskin attire, kind of like a sofa turned bad, the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and something suspiciously reminiscent of that one time the camping trip cooked up more smoke than s'mores. He squints into the depths of the river, transfixed, probably asking himself how precisely he'd look good in the group photo for mountain men who shouldn't be near water. And then there are the trees. Can we talk about the trees for a second? Bent and scarred by past floods, like it's some kind of natural therapy session gone wrong, they wave their branches as if in eager agreement with Bill's questionable life choices. It's the kind of dramatic backdrop that's perfect for an epic speech no one asked for. Let's talk about solitude and wet socks, shall we? Can you hear the water crashing against the rocks? The sound is as confusing as a sibling trying to explain how they lost the car keys while still being grateful the car was parked in the driveway for once. Here, Bill contemplates a most serious question. Is it worth risking his pride trying to fish? Or is he destined for a dinner of mostly forgotten bread and whatever else he can scrounge off the various nature-flavored hazards lying around? Now, every time the current murmurs that enticing sound, like a snooty waiter reciting the daily specials, it gets Bill reflecting deeply. What is he really fishing for? Answers? Fish? Or merely a side-eye from a passing deer or two? It's like trying to untangle your iPhone charger while pretending you know exactly how to fix it. An exercise in futility. Speaking of smells, oh, the olfactory symphony. The heady blend of pine and damp earth intermingles with something decidedly fishy. Perhaps it's just yesterday's lunch washing up on the shore. If you could bottle that scent, the label might read, "Ode to Bill's regrettable choices." Forget high-end cologne. Talk about a winner. But our beloved Bill isn't just here to catch fish or serenade the river. No, he's attempting to establish his social rep as the rugged outdoorsman who can navigate nature's tantrums like a pro. Or at least not fall in the water while doing so. Ah, yes. Nothing says mountain man quite like a graceful leap into the rampaging abyss, he muses, trying to perfect his balance on a particularly uncooperative rock as it gleefully slips away beneath him. As the sun dips low, casting golden rays more dramatic than a reality show reveal, our friend Bill can't help but guffaw at the absurdity surrounding him. Here I am, having engaged in philosophical debates with a fish, and still no sign of tomorrow's breakfast. His chuckle bounces off the riverbanks. Because at the end of the day, amid the wild wonders and exhilarating hurdles that come from living on the edge of nature's buffet, our mountain man walks away with one critical life lesson. The art of conversation is best learned from not just the sounds of the river, but from the embarrassing stories you carry on your own muddy boots. And that, dear listener, might just reel you in for another day on the edge of unsilent laughter. Chapter 14. The Art of Not Getting Swept Away. Let's talk about survival, as in how not to be part of the swirling chaos that is a river in full bloom. You see, when Bill dropped his well-worn pack onto the muddy banks, it wasn't just another Tuesday afternoon. No, my friend, this was the 1831 version of playing Let's Make a Deal, with nature offering some rather questionable prizes. Picture him standing there, hatchet in hand, as if brandishing a tiny, overzealous sword against whatever adventures lay ahead. Because nothing says professional wilderness guru quite like looking slightly bewildered while the world spins around you. The roar of the river was like an excited audience at a bad play, cheering Bill on while he attempted to key in on every delicate nuance of the wilderness. The air carried a waft of moisture so thick it almost suggested that the clouds were having a delightful party. And you, dear listener, were only getting the spilled drinks. Every slosh of the water echoed the very essence of a good old-fashioned hangout. Minus the beer, of course, and substitute it with something that smells suspiciously like damp bear fur. Now imagine Bill squinting into that frothy expanse, contemplating the logistics of catching dinner while also keeping his dignity intact. Just as a friendly reminder, it was 1831, not the trendiest date on the calendar, and mountain men were basically the pioneers of looking rugged yet unkempt. Think fashion meets wilderness warfare. The fact that he was out there was 1 part bravery, 2 parts questionable judgment, and 3 parts sheer comedy waiting to happen. And then you have these glorious trees surrounding him, nestled and twisted like old gossiping aunts at a family reunion. Their branches swayed, whispering, "Hey Bill, maybe back away from the water before you turn into an accidental fish." But alas, he had other plans. Armed with nothing but his hatchet and a growing repertoire of questionable life choices, he appeared utterly convinced that wrestling with a river was a perfectly adequate way to earn respect among the wilderness fellowship. The cacophony of crashing waves sent shivers of excitement down Bill's spine until it dawned on him. Grand thoughts of cheeseburgers were quickly replaced by the pressing need to avoid transforming into a very soggy mountain man. Could it be that mighty rivers like this, full of wild enthusiasm, weren't just nature's version of a rock concert, but also an unconventional fishing lesson? "Remember, sport," he muttered to no one in particular. "If you fall in, at least shout, 'It's all part of the plan,' for posterity." His quest for skill didn't stop at fishing, though. No, Bill was determined to showcase his prowess in the art of not getting swept away. The slippery stones became his nemesis, and the river laughed menacingly, as if saying, "Oh, you thought you'd dance across me like I'm a cheap bar."
Floor? How adorable. And thus, our bold Bill tried to channel his best ballet form as he gingerly stepped across those unwieldy rocks. One minute he was looking like an elegantly poised gazelle. The next minute, he was trying to embody a high-diving penguin. "This should have come with a warning label," he murmured as his foot slid on a particularly rebellious stone, turning gracefully into a minor comedy. The expression on his face was priceless, a comedy of epic proportions that could rival the best slapstick film your grandmother couldn't stop raving about. Let's be honest, if the fish had feelings, every leap and slip Bill made would have sent them into fits of laughter. "What's next? A belly flop competition?" they might whisper among themselves. The irony of trying to catch dinner while providing nature's woodland creatures with their own entertainment. Surely they'd post that highlight reel on Vine if they could. As he persisted in his objective to maintain balance against nature's relentless onslaught, the reality hit home. Fishing was less about the actual fish and more about dishing out a crash course on humility. Some folks took years to master their craft. Bill, however, was honing his skills just between splashes and snorts of laughter. His hatchet became less of a tool and more of a dramatic prop, swaying about as he tried his best to channel the wisdom of his forebears. Then came a moment of clarity that washed over him like that unforgiving cold splash from the river. Perhaps the greatest lesson in surviving mountain man life wasn't how to catch fish, but rather how to dodge humiliation. Each slip became not just a dip into the river, but a reminder that life is a little like sock shopping. You can pick whatever striped pattern you want, but you might as well prepare for a few mismatched moments. And as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of gold, each exaggerated gesture became a whimsical dance cue in the great ballet of the wild. If nothing else, Bill now felt like he'd hosted the most awkward of dinner parties, only this time, it was nature that served itself, and he, well, was merely the reluctant guest. With a chuckle and a slight surrender to the whims of fate, it was decided. If he couldn't catch dinner, he'd surely entertain enough to warrant a trophy for Best Dancer in the Wild.
Because in those wondrous moments between swigs of water, slippery stones, and a nagging hatchet, Bill learned the most valuable outdoor skill of all. Sometimes, survival isn't about preparation. It's about pure, unadulterated flexibility, and a pat on your back for trying not to drown in life's daily antics.
Chapter 15. The Mighty Wiki-Up Build-A-Bear Supplement. Let's chat about shelter building, shall we? Imagine you're standing on the cusp of an expansive frontier, and you're not just pondering life's profound questions like, what's for dinner? Or, why does the lumpy bag I'm sleeping on feel like a rugby field for rodents? No, today, you're tasked with crafting something more sacred than your aunt's famous lasagna. A Wiki-Up. Yes, that's right, a Wiki-Up. The heavyweight champion of makeshift mountain man living. Picture it, if you will. The air around you is thick with the smell of damp earth, pine needles, and just a whisper of despair as you survey your surroundings like a slightly confused eagle. You're surrounded by sturdy saplings that are about 5 feet high and ready to be tied together in what feels like a lumberjack version of a blanket fort. It's a social evening activity, I assure you, involving nothing but the warmth of pine-scented camaraderie and the knowledge that Mother Nature is sure to chuck her most precarious tempests your way any time now. In the 1830s, at the peak of the American fur trade era, mountain men weren't just dabbling in fur trapping. They were the original DIY Pinterest enthusiasts, minus the sharp sarcasm and filter-free Instagram photos. Armed with wild imaginations and probably a hatchet or two, you are about to step into their shoes, or perhaps just their less than stylish moccasins. Where else could you learn that building a shelter is less about stability and more about convincing yourself that a pile of sticks can psychologically shelter you from bears? Now imagine trying to explain this to someone from a cozy suburban neighborhood. Oh yes, we're just constructing a conical masterpiece from whatever sticks nature blesses us with. It's like a 4-star hotel, if the hotel lobby is also a bear's picnic and everyone shares it. With a deep breath, you gather the saplings, each one speaking to you like a kindly old grandparent. Here we are, dearie. Let's make some questionable life choices today. The sound of branches creaking as you lash them together is like an orchestra of apology on behalf of the woodlands. Sorry, trees. I promise I'm not up to anything too mischievous, just a bit of architectural insanity. The Wiki-Up design is as layered as your favorite burrito, each component adding to the richness of your adventure. First, the frame, a sturdy, combat-ready triangle or cone that can easily double as a secret rendezvous for disgruntled squirrels. Oh yes, the squirrels have a lot to say when they see you mishandling their property. If only you could rewind to tell them that today's construction was less about shelter and more about existential crisis. As you start lashing the saplings together, the sound of twine slicing through the air becomes a new kind of music. Do I get points for style? You muse, glancing at your fellow mountain men. Of course, they are busy tripping over their own boots, swatting at mosquitoes the size of house cats, and wondering if their last meal was actually meant for the raccoons that snuck up on them. Creating a roof design is perhaps the most delightful part of this endeavor. Will you opt for a clear view of the sky and the potential for a rogue bird to crash land onto your face? Or go for full-on cozy woodland ambience? Choices, choices. It's like picking toppings for your Sunday night pizza, but instead, you're selecting between tree branches that will either cocoon you in safety or leave you exposed to the elements as if welcoming a rain-soaked party. Ah, the sweet sound of your dreams being dashed by a rogue downpour. Please, take your seats. Let's not forget insulation. That is, if we can refer to scraps of leaves and moss as insulation. Conclusion. Being a mountain man is an eco-friendly endeavor, even when it feels a bit like playing, what can I throw at this pile of sticks to make it better? Just picture yourself cozying up to nature's finest for warmth. Unfortunately, your instincts may not work on the terrifying layer of mystery as to what makes that scratching sound a few feet away.
Spoiler alert, it's most likely a raccoon, and I assure you, he's judging your choice of living arrangements. Once your wiki-up is complete, and let's hope it doesn't fall down like an overly confident Jenga tower, you step back, admiring your work as you think, this definitely beats my last apartment with a leaky ceiling. The proud completion of your creation is mere icing on the cake. The anticipation of meeting nature's challenges adds the real flavor. Imagine your fellow mountain men's faces as they try to keep a straight face while questioning your life choices without outright laughing. So, is this where you'll hold your future wiki cookouts? An intimate little gathering, perhaps? As twilight descends upon the mountains in hues of purple and gold, there's a moment of silence, broken only by your stomach rumbling ominously, reminding you that the true adventure has just begun. You realize you've gone from a mere human to a full-on woodland architect. Constructing a wiki-up becomes not merely about building a shelter, but about forging bonds, testing limits, and embracing the sense of humor that helps you navigate between the absurdity of your life and the wild laughter of the forest. So, whether it's your first night in the wiki-up or merely an exercise in sheer survival, the journey serves a vital purpose. Building, if nothing else, is about becoming part of the bigger joke that is life. A twisty arrangement of sticks and stone, and yes, sometimes even bear fur, perfectly wrapped up in the comforting irony of human resilience. And all of this wonderful chaos? It's just another chapter in a very peculiar book on how to evolve gracefully into the role of the
Ultimate Mountain Man. Chapter 16. The Pine Cone Symphony. A Mountain Man's Master Class in Waterproofing. Let's talk about roofing, shall we? In your new life as a mountain man, you find yourself knee-deep in the art of creating a shelter that not only keeps out the rain, but also gives off an air of rugged sophistication, like a lumberjack in a tuxedo, if you will. But today, instead of attending a black tie event, you're taking on the noble duty of waterproofing your wiki-up. Imagine the moment. The sun is hovering like a lazy spectator in the sky, casting golden rays over the forest, while you stand hunched over, knees practically kissing the ground. You can smell the fresh pine and a hint of sage lingering in the air, mingling with the not-so-pleasant aroma of your last attempt at hunting, which may or may not involve last week's raccoon. Who knew raccoons were so feisty when properly invoked at the dinner table? Equipped with nothing but your rugged charm and a weathered knife, handy for everything from skinning game to slicing unyieldingly tough jerky, you get to work. First, you grab a handful of fragrant pine boughs, twisting and contorting them like they're auditioning for a role in a badly written soap opera. The goal? A waterproof roof that can handle anything from a moderate drizzle to a torrential downpour that would have Noah scratching his head. You methodically layer those boughs, starting from the bottom, an architectural choice that can be credited to a healthy dose of common sense and perhaps a gentle nudge from your inner critic. You overlap them, like those affectionately unreasonable childhood memories of trying to build the perfect blanket fort. Remember that? Only this time, it's significantly more likely to be attacked by grumpy bears. As you work, the scent of pine fills the air, and you find yourself pondering the very important questions of modern life. What is the deal with waterproofing? Could I apply this technique to my own life? You chuckle to yourself, clinging on to the hope that protecting oneself from emotional storms is not quite as labor-intensive as crafting a roof out of 100 little branches, though it may feel similar. Naturally, you are also curiously aware of your audience, the forest critters perched just out of sight. Was that a squirrel rolling its beady eyes at your engineering skills? Perhaps. The songbirds chap away as if conducting their own critique of your handiwork. Ladies and gentlemen, they chirp. In today's episode, our guest star attempts to create a roof that won't collapse like your hopes of a good night's sleep. There's a rhythm to this process,
something akin to setting a soundtrack to your masterpiece. The repetitive thud of your hands laying the boughs down provides the background music to a symphony only you and the forest can really appreciate, punctuated by an occasional bird squawk that sounds suspiciously like a disgruntled Yelp review.
1 star. The roof was great. The construction? Too many pine needles. Gradually, as you layer more boughs, it feels less like you're making a roof and more like you're constructing what the architects call a fish scale pattern. This delightful design, known for repelling rain and snow, acts almost like a natural raincoat, just less fashionable and with significantly more potential for critter housing. If only it could protect you from the crippling embarrassment of tripping over a stump in front of your fellow mountain men. The ambient sounds of western wilderness add layers to the tapestry of your creation. The rustling leaves play a gentle tune, while the wind provides a soft crescendo, nagging away at your self-confidence as you marvel at how each piece both fits and rebels against the other. Why couldn't they just cooperate like fine cheese and wine? You ponder, chuckling to yourself. And hey, let's talk practicality. You eventually learn that proper insulation doesn't come from rare squirrel furs or overpriced marshmallows, but rather these charming layers of pine that could delightfully shed rain like it's auditioning for the role of Best Supporting Actor in a post-apocalyptic nature movie. As the minutes tick by, you layer until your little inflatable rafts of pine boughs resemble the panoramic view of a mountain range, complete with an architectural flourish not seen since the grandeur of medieval cathedrals, or maybe just slightly more crooked than you'd like. "I'm not building a cathedral," you whisper, shaking off the critic within, "just waiting for the next storm to meet and defeat my glorious creation." At last, with a triumphant sigh, you step back to inspect your handiwork. And what do you see? A roof with enough charm to bring even the grumpiest of forest dwellers to tears. If these boughs could talk, they'd surely chatter about the incredible resilience of mountain architecture, possibly interspersed with some well-deserved self-congratulations. "Behold, the water-resistant wonderland that is my life choices." As the sun dips lower on the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue on your structure, you realize that it's not merely the completion of the roof that brings satisfaction, but the absurdity of the entire experience. You're no longer just a mountain man. You're a proud creator of makeshift architecture, steeped in history, and probably a tad bit of mud. So here you stand, a bit dirtier, definitely fractured by the humor of daily life in the wilderness. But hey, at least you know that when the rains come tumbling down, you'll be cozily squished between your expertly layered boughs, giggling with delight at the thought of bears trying to figure out the complex geometry of your quaint abode. And if nothing else, you may have just patented the proud slogan, "Rain, rain, stay away," and no, you cannot come here to play. Chapter 17. A Snowy Surprise, When Mountain Men Went Soft and Fluffy. Hey guys, tonight we dive into something colder than a snowman's heart on a Minnesota winter night. The 1830s, that heart-pounding era when the mountain men roamed the western American frontier. Picture it, fluffy white flakes drifting down, falling silently against the rugged bark of towering trees, as your thoughts pause, just like nature itself, except for the frantic rush of a nearby river echoing through the silence. Now, before we embark on this comically crisp adventure, let's encourage you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, because nothing says love like passive-aggressively engaging with an algorithm. But only if you actually enjoy this, of course, no obligation. So, go on. Dim the lights, maybe pop a fan on. Toss a blanket over yourself and settle into this whole mountain man thing. As you snuggle in, have you ever wondered, what would it be like to catch snowflakes on your tongue in the wild? Could you barter with a bear if it tried to steal your snacks? Would a mountain man ever win a snowball fight?
Or would getting smacked with a snowball spoil his tough reputation? You've just woken up in 1831, the year when fur was the ultimate fashion statement and trapping was the most valuable skill, except for the fact that most mountain men could barely trap their own feelings. Welcome to life on the edge of civilization, where your biggest concern isn't work-life balance, but whether the last slice of dried meat was actually good or just mystery meat you found under your bedroll. Now, let's talk about our slashers, mountain men. The sun peeks through a thick canopy of pine, transforming everything into a luminous, snowy wonderland. Fat, white flakes begin to fall silently, settling on the ground like a gluten-free pillow thrown by a skeptical health fanatic. You can smell the cold air, tinged with the pine and a faint whiff of, well, mountain man, which is best described as earthy with a hint of, I haven't bathed in a week. In this wilderness paradise, you try to navigate the day-to-day life of a mountain man, which seems deceptively simple until you consider the absurd logistics. For instance, you need firewood. But fetching that wood means battling packs of squirrels who believe they're tiny, furry ninjas. And you, my friend, are just an unwitting tourist in their kung fu movie. Every step you take to gather kindling feels like stepping into a live-action game of whack-a-mole, where the moles are alarmingly aggressive and armed with acorns. They're small, but feisty. And when it comes to food, forget about pulling a frozen pizza from the freezer. You're hunting. The art of stalking a meal is not unlike dating in the 21st century. It requires patience, strategy, and just enough awkwardness to leave everyone involved questioning their choices. Finding a deer involves stealth and camo, which is essential. Because nothing says, I'm here to provide dinner, like a loud sneeze or inadvertently stepping on a twig. With every snap, you can practically hear the dinner bell ringing for your dinner running off into the sunset. Ah, the tasks of snow-laden days don't stop there. You might venture down to the river. Be careful though, the slippery rocks are less friendly than they appear. One precise, graceful step and you're down, flailing like a confused snow angel in the middle of a catastrophic waterslide. The cold water splashes up, leaving you as soggy as a raggedy doll. Just what every mountain man dreams of: hydration and embarrassment. And let's not forget the ever-charming camaraderie you share with fellow mountain men. When they gather around the campfire, laughter is the soundtrack to their rugged lives. Except you know that laughter acts as a front for their deep-rooted insecurity. Did you hear about that fellow who tried to trap a bear? One of them might jest, leaning closer to the warmth. Now he's just a fluffy rug in a cabin. If there's any truth in that joke, we'll never know, but we can safely assume it had something to do with one man's urge for a wintry brawl. Yet, there's something beautiful about this life. As the snow continues to fall, you find peace in the undulating rhythms of the wilderness. Buried in your thoughts, you pause to consider your choices. Was the excess of snow that hit you in the face earlier simply nature's way of bouncing you back into existence? This serene moment is like an awkward hug from your great aunt. It's unwanted, but oddly comforting. Each breath you take fills your lungs with the crunchy scent of pine and brisk coldness, though that may just be the remnants of last week's questionable stew trying to escape. And there it is, the balance of mountain life, the adventure, the discomfort, and maybe, just maybe, the chance to become a legend worthy of composing new tales for future generations. As you drift off into softer dreams, remember, my dear listener, in the world of mountain men, when it snows, all you really need is a sense of humor and maybe a spare pair of dry socks. After all, nothing says, I'm rugged, quite like a well-timed snowball fight, as long as the only casualty is your dignity. Chapter 18. The Quest for Kindling. Crawl like a mountain man. Hey guys, tonight's adventure takes us deeper than your last existential crisis. Beneath the boughs of history,
where mountain men rummaged through the wilderness for one essential skill: sourcing firewood. Picture this: you're crawling on your knees, a dedicated seeker of dry wood beneath the low-hanging branches of a massive fallen pine. It's chilly, and, let's be honest, the ground has all the charm of an ice cube tray. So, if you're ready to channel your inner survivalist and engage in what can only be described as Olympic-level scavenging, then let's shine a light on a pursuit that seems so simple, yet holds the very essence of life in the wild. Now, before we burrow in, let's lean into a few questions for our unwitting traveler. Ever wondered what it's like to crawl through your grocery store's discount aisle, desperately searching for that last elusive can of tuna? Or how about that feeling when you finally locate the Wi-Fi password and lift your gaze only to find your friend reaching for the last slice of pizza? Let's face it, survival isn't just about hunting bears and fending off angry squirrels. It's about laying claim to the comfort of a good meal, even if it arrives with the aroma of a week-old sock. Congratulations, my friend. You've just transported yourself to 1831, the year when wearing layers was more critical than deciding whether to stream the latest series on your tablet. Welcome to a world where keeping warm depended largely on your ability to land some dry sticks and pieces of wood for fuel, quickly transforming you from courageous adventurer to wood-fearing woodland creature. Let's talk about firewood. You're laying on your stomach, wiggling under low-hanging branches like a desperate otter seeking shelter. Every pine needle that pricks your skin becomes a reminder that Mother Nature is no dear friend. Speaking of friends, remember that one buddy who uses your couch as a personal gym mat? Yeah, it's like trying to avoid the gym while doing everything in your power to make them uncomfortable. This is how you feel, navigating around jagged branches and damp underbrush, praying the squirrels don't plot a small coup in your direction. You squint as you search for the driest, most sheltered pieces of wood, half hoping to stumble upon an enchanted log that'll fulfill all your firewood wishes. Or maybe a squirrel with substantial negotiation skills. You're like a hopeful architect looking to find just the right piece for his latest wooden Lego castle. Except the stakes are life and death, and your fantasy world has insatiably cold nights. Ah, the sweet smell of pine and slightly soggy earth fills your nostrils. Perhaps in this moment, you can ponder if today's big catch of wood will soon be cloaked in flames, warming your hands and quite possibly attracting a bear or two. In a world where your biggest reward is merely being able to feel your fingers again, can you justify running away from a furry majesty who may just want to join your little campfire soiree? But, alas, even between those two muddy logs, partially buried under 6 months of misunderstanding winter, there lies the bittersweet irony of roughing it in the wild. You could fiercely earn bragging rights and tell your friends you bathed with eagerness in a frozen lake, only to be overshadowed by the truth that your biggest flaw was misjudging the lengths of your wood-hauling forays. Picture this: your friends cozying up to their home heaters, sharing Instagram pictures of gourmet s'mores, while you foam at the mouth smeared with smoke, trying to reconstruct a semblance of warmth in the chilly underground safe haven of fallen pine. Now, what about those mountain man tales of survival? Gather around the campfire and listen closely. Rumor has it, the most celebrated firewood finders could transform an average campfire into an all-you-can-eat buffet of warmth and brightness. Their secret? It wasn't just gathering fuel, it was the performance art of it all. How to toss in just the right kind of wood with a hint of flair to ensure even an old grizzled bear stops, stares, and contemplates joining the chatter. You know that feeling when someone at the bar delivers the perfect one-liner and you're left laughing while also silently judging because they probably should be serving drinks instead? And yet, despite the cold chaos of your scavenger hunt, a strange comfort settles in. You pause. Take a moment to picture yourself, engulfed in snow, buried under relentless pines, radiating pure tenacity.
your rugged exterior filled with birch bark and dreamlike aspirations of how life will be once the fire roars. Ah, the beauty of this wild struggle is found not just in the warmth of flames, but in the laughter shared when everyone else realizes how ridiculous life has truly become. A collective sigh of relief when finding out that only one class of obstacle separates you from feeling absolutely human in the wilderness. Now that you're snuggled in, remember, in the frigid tapestry of mountain life, whether you're subjected to the whims of angry nuts or unexpected mishaps with firewood, it's the absurdity that makes every frosty moment worth recounting some winter evening. And as the wolves howl like they just missed their favorite dinner show, just know that in this vast expanse of wilderness, camaraderie, and unlikely thoughts, humor keeps fires burning, and every mountain man, slightly warmer, heading home. Chapter 19. Beneath the Smoke, the Charm of Cooking with Strenuous Flame. Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey far more heated than your last argument over who gets to control the AC. The culinary adventures of mountain men in 1831. Picture this, a small, carefully built fire crackling inside a wickiup, an iron pot hanging over the flames, while dancing shadows make it reminiscent of a low-budget horror flick featuring a very angry squirrel. You're not just here for warmth. You're hoping to whip up something that, without a doubt, will ensure you eat better than last week's charred leftovers, which, ironically, might have been last week's bear encounter. But before we set that pot boiling, have you ever wondered what it would be like to cook without an oven? Or imagine trying to bake a cake with nothing but a rock and a dream, while the local critters eye you suspiciously. Ever experienced cooking something so burnt that even the smoke alarms issued a very passive-aggressive warning? It's the kind of culinary horror that makes even the most adventurous chef question their life choices. Congratulations, you've just awakened in the wild frontier, where your mealtime expectations are basically a bowl of imagination mixed with just the right amount of wood smoke. It's 1831, the year when mountain men were the ultimate outdoor enthusiasts, yet somehow their gourmet meals seems to hover somewhere between survival delicacy and hazardously charred fate. Let's talk about those endless hours spent trying to turn humble provisions into something close to edible. First things first, let's discuss the joy of sourcing your ingredients. The only thing harder to find than a soulmate in a rom-com is getting your hands on fresh veggies. You're out here, wheeling and dealing with nature, foraging like a quirky 19th century hipster. Your knife isn't a fancy chef's blade. It's more like something a lumberjack would keep handy for emergency whittling. You survey the ground like you're competing on a reality show called Survivor Vegetable Edition. Imagine a world where your best bet for flavor might just be a questionable potato, and some herbs that might have been basil a week ago, and something much, much more adventurous now. Let's be real. You take a deep breath, rack your brain, and pray whatever herbs you've picked don't end up turning your stew into an edible science experiment. You reflect on how a single burnt bite might fuel the entire town's gossip circuit for years to come, the stuff of legend. Remember when old Joe made that stew? What a fine, fragrant failure. And oh, the glorious art of cooking over an open flame. Forget fancy cookbooks. You're on your own. There's no recipe book guiding you through the soothing sensation of what can only be described as a culinary mild chaos. As you dangle meat over those flickering flames, it's a delicate dance between should be tasty and please don't ruin another meal. Picture this. You try to flip your dinner with the grace of an Olympic gymnast, but end up splattering grease as if you're a toddler wielding a paintbrush for the first time. The sizzling sounds climax as pops of fat join forces with the crackling fire. Your ears pick up a raucous duo of smells, part earthy goodness, and the other part resembling something best described as an abandoned sock. Here's a question for you. Has your culinary choice ever attracted unwanted guests? You know, when the local wildlife suddenly takes an interest in your campfire and decides that your stew is now on the menu? You can practically hear the squirrels snickering as they film their own survival show. Watch as this naive mountain man loses his lunch. Let's not forget the critical part of this operation, the ladies and gentlemen you might have to impress. Your fellow mountain men, rugged and wild-eyed, sitting around the fire like they're preparing for a cooking show audition. And what are you serving up? A bowl of something so questionable that even the pot might declare it has had enough. If they're polite, they'll eat it. If not, you'll just have to endure the awkward silence and pep talk your cooking attempts deserve. Come on, guys, if we squint hard enough, this could pass as, gourmet? But there's a silver lining in this smoky misery, eventual success. After a long, hard battle between you, the flames, and that obstinate pot, you finally produce something resembling a meal. The moment when meat and potatoes embrace each other is a triumphant one, akin to the last slice of pizza finally getting claimed. Gather around, men. Anyone could be a hunter. It takes a refined palate to declare it's actually acceptable. And then there you are, sitting under the stars, a chorus of crackling embers symphonizing alongside your improbable feast. You share tales of epic bear encounters and general absurdities, chortling like you truly own this cooking game. As much as you try to convince yourself that this meal deserves a Michelin star, you remember the great message of the frontier. Any food is good food when accompanied by a good story and laughter. So, as the stars twinkle above like tiny spectators at your grand culinary show, may you rest easy, knowing that in the world of mountain men, sweet triumph lay somewhere between the art of flaming mischief and the ironic accolades of shared campfire stories. Remember, it ain't about perfection, it's about survival, and hopefully not giving future historians something to shake their heads over, muttering, "What were they thinking? What were..."
Chapter 20. The Weight of Wilderness. Bill's Vigil by the Fire. Hey guys, tonight we're about to traverse the rugged terrain of creativity, a place where the wilderness meets the ever-watchful eyes of a man named Bill. Picture this. Bill, our protagonist, sitting cross-legged by a fire small enough to roast a marshmallow, but fierce enough to ward off existential dread, gazes intently at the smoke hole above like he's trying to decode the mysteries of the universe. Spoiler alert, he isn't. This is 1831, a year when mountain men spoke an entirely different language, a blend of grunts, laughter, and a sprinkling of panic. But do you ever wonder what it would be like to live on the edge of civilization, where danger looms like that awkward silence after telling a bad joke? What do you do when every rustle in the brush sends your heart racing? Ever pondered how to roast game while simultaneously managing a crisis because you just remembered your laundry's been sitting in the river since last week? The complexities of survival. Now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the wild frontier, the land of extravagantly coiffed beards, oversized hats, and an unwavering belief that a good fire could solve all your problems. Here, where Bill sits, you quickly learn that the flickering flames are not just for warmth, but serve as a vivid metaphor for life itself, unpredictably blazing and occasionally burning out altogether. Let's talk about Bill's dual consciousness for a moment. On one hand, he's the quintessential mountain man, rugged, roguish, and remarkably equipped to survive in these untamed lands. But there's another side to Bill. Let's call him Nervous Bill. You see, the wilderness isn't just stunning, it's teeming with critters ready to turn you into lunch. Every rustle in the brush sends a jolt through him. What's worse? A bear, a mountain lion, or simply realizing you've run out of coffee. In the currency of fear, all contenders are close to equal. As you settle into this scene, ask yourself, if Bill's a notorious mountain man, does he have a mountain man coffee mug that reads, "Life is brutiful"? What constitutes a successful morning in the expansive wilderness? Has he ever stumbled upon a squirrel adorned with a headpiece that makes him question his masculinity? Or maybe he's just asking deeper questions, like, how did I end up here anyway? Back to Bill, who's now attentively studying the smoke rising from the fire. It swirls up into the maw of the night sky,
doing its best impression of a vapid Instagram influencer. Bill wonders if he might one day master the art of smoke signals. What do they even mean anyway? "Help, I've burned my stew." Or perhaps, "Send more coffee." The sheer possibilities of smoke communication are endless, yet utterly daunting. But let's set the scene. The wind murmurs softly as Bill sits there, the crackle of the fire creating music, reminiscent of a kazoo rendition of Beethoven. The smell of burning wood fills the air, punctuated with a hint of, well, let's hope it's just the wood. He chuckles to himself, grateful he hasn't just turned his dinner into the world's smelliest funeral pyre. This was a skill, mind you, the art of not only cooking but surviving the existential dread of uncertain flavors, all while managing to keep the squirrels at bay. Suddenly, without warning, something rustles in the underbrush. Bill, with the grace of a startled deer, narrows his eyes suspiciously. Is it a bear? Is it a mountain lion? Or is it just Pete, the least intimidating mountain man of them all, desperately trying to sneak back from the outhouse? In the world of flashy Instagram dogs parading in tutus, Bill's wilderness wildness churned with more mystery than an unsolved riddle. Who knew nature was both beautiful and capable of leaving one perpetually on edge? Ever pondered what it's like to have a showdown with a squirrel? Bill isn't exactly gearing up for an intense duel, but you can bet the moment that little furry nut thief dares to approach, he feels like he's in an episode of Fear Factor. Will he beat back the adversary with a makeshift spatula? Will he lose the last of his breakfast to such a furry bandit? Or might he actually end up sharing his food, only to end up with an uninvited rodent roommate? In a fleeting moment of clarity, Bill shakes his head as if to dismiss these absurd thoughts. This was wilderness life. It's not just about camping, it's a constant play of wits, balancing survival and a healthy dose of humor. Being a mountain man means he's not just scraping by. He's living dangerously and haphazardly, spinning tales taller than the peaks surrounding him. As daylight fades into an inky blue sky, the fire crackles beside him, and soon he finds himself lost in a dreamlike state, where thoughts of danger merge smoothly with dreams of an elaborate coffee scenario involving a rogue bear and a can of beans. The line between reality and imagination blurs, and Bill chuckles softly, blissfully nestled in the chaos of wilderness life, where the absurd triumphs over the mundane, and every rustle or pop of the fire reminds him that, yes, he is alive, at least until morning. So, as you drift off, think of Bill's fire, the unpredictable flicker of warmth and uncertainty, like us during those late-night snack runs when life feels too uncertain and wild. Remember, while you snooze, adventure is just a half-spilled cup of coffee away. Here's hoping that you dream vividly enough to defeat your own squirrel-like fears. After all, who wouldn't want to wake up feeling like a mountain man, with a spark of survival nestled deep within their spirit?
Chapter 21. Bill's Twilight Epiphanies. Hey guys, welcome back to our little wilderness retreat. Tonight, we delve deep into the rough and tumble world of early mountain men. The kind of roughness that makes a wool sweater seem like high fashion. Our man Bill, seated by a flickering campfire, is contemplating life, liberty, and the questionable decision to have beans for dinner. Imagine this. One moment, you're lost in thought, and the next, you're battling a wild raccoon over the last scrap of jerky. But hey, that's just Tuesday on the frontier. If you've ever found yourself pondering whether the neighboring raccoons are plotting your demise or simply hoping to snag a slice of pizza, this story is the wilderness equivalent, only with less pizza and more grizzly bears. But I encourage you to lean into this narrative, and if you do enjoy the ride, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Because only if you actually enjoy it will we keep the absurdity coming. Now, as you settle into your cozy seat, dim the lights, and perhaps dial up that fan to a refreshing breeze, let's tune in to the whispers of Bill's thoughts. Ever wondered what goes through the mind of a mountain man while he's waiting for his dinner to cook over a fire that could use a motivational poster? Or how about the intricate politics of deciding which meal to pretend you're sharing with a particularly observant squirrel? Remember, in life, just like in the wilderness, sometimes it's the small victories that matter, like keeping your food stash from being a 5-star buffet for squirrels. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1831, a year when trending meant surviving winter by wrapping yourself in one too many sheepskins, and ghosting referred to every face you saw because you'd rather not have to socialize when the nearest socializing option was a bear who didn't want to share its den. Take a moment to visualize Bill as he squints into the fire, contemplating the nature of the universe in multiple-choice format. Is it more important to trap beavers or swindle your neighbor out of a pelt? A. Beavers. B. Neighbors. Or C. Just keep an eye on the grizzlies looming in the background like judgmental relatives. For Bill, and every one of us really, decisions like these can feel monumental. When you're a mountain man, the most valuable skills aren't always the ones that seem conventional. Spoiler alert, it's not about how many critters you can trap. It's more about how effectively you can barter with other mountain men who might still think scented candles are coming soon to a valley near them. Let's dive into the soundscape of this wild frontier. Picture the crackling fire, its pops and hisses creating an overture of chaos, as if the flames were auditioning for a one-man show about survival. The rich scent of burning cedar mingles with tinges of, what was that again? Oh no, please be just the wood, please, not last week's leftovers. The wilderness may be beautiful, but the potential for culinary disasters is even more thrilling. You know, like deciding to construct your very own smokehouse after too much whiskey and not enough foresight. As time drifts slowly by, Bill turns his attention to the shadows cast by his campfire. Am I more man than shadow? He muses, awaiting an answer from the universe. Spoiler, it's not in a hurry. Suddenly, he's struck by an epiphany. He could start a memoir. Titles like Culinary Catastrophes Amongst the Pines and How to Hug a Bear, but maybe not, pop into his mind. And before you know it, he's mentally drafting chapters. Or maybe he's just hungry. It's hard to keep track. But before we dive deeper into Bill's existential crisis, let's talk about the neighbors. Not the ones from your high school, or the ones too close for comfort during the neighborly barbecue. No, these are the simple, yet terrifying existence of mountain men allies. Picture a rogue group of wilderness misfits. They might argue over who has the best hat. They all agree this isn't a notable debate. Or whether a sewn-up deer hide can really be considered formal wear. One evening, after too many cups of mountain brew, they gather round. It's a blend of storytelling and survival tactics, all delivered with the cadence of a drunken bard singing for his supper. Ever tried to convince a fellow mountain man that duck feathers are not, in fact, the best choice for insulation? Imagine the debates on the practicality of leather versus fur-lined coats, all with the calm ferocity of a squirrel ready to fight for a morsel of trail mix. Now picture Bill, with camel-colored mutton chops and a visage that positively screams rugged, engaging in these philosophical debates amidst the towering evergreens. Meanwhile, his stomach grumbles. It's either a call for more beans or a warning that a squirrel has taken too much interest in his cooking supplies. As darkness deepens and the night takes over, shadows of Bill's rugged friends begin to blend into the flickering light, morphing into half-formed creatures of lore and anecdote. Every crackle of the fire braids itself with tales of adventure and near misses with ravenous wildlife, as Bill contemplates whether he might be better suited to threaten squirrels rather than battle for their affection. The wilderness, after all, requires not just brawn, but wit, humor, and a willingness to dodge another gourmet blunder that could either burn you or leave you without dinner, and possibly humor, too.
So as you drift off to sleep, with visions of a fiercely determined mountain man and his burgeoning career as something resembling a comedian, remember, like Bill, you're not just surviving, you're embracing the absurdity and hilarity of life. Any threat, be it a bear, a raccoon, or the existential dread of naming your fear of rodents, can be made into another laughable adventure, just waiting
to unfold with every crackle of the fire. Tomorrow, we hope to steer clear of philosophical debates that involve food as a weapon. But who knows? Perhaps we'll find more ways a mountain man can bring humor to the wilderness. Sweet dreams, and may you never face the fate of sharing your lunch with a bear. Chapter 22: Bill and the Cosmos of Coyote Conspiracy. Hey guys, welcome back to another adventure in our whimsical wilderness. Tonight, we're camping out under a sky so densely peppered with stars, you'd think the universe was holding a glittering party and forgot to send the RSVP to Earth. As you wrap yourself in your blankets, hopefully not as stinky as Bill's, you're in for something deeper than the nearest raccoon burrow. The art of mountain living in 1831, a time when the most valuable skills were a mix of outrageous survival tactics and an uncanny ability to dodge overly enthusiastic squirrels who fancied themselves dinner companions. So, if you ever wondered how to barter with your neighbor over a half-eaten jerky stick, or pondered if your friendship with the raccoons next door was actually a ploy for your last slice of pie, you're in for a treat. But do us a favor. Only like, subscribe, and comment if you find yourself chuckling at the absurdity of it all. We're not here to force a friendship based on mutual beans, unless, of course, you prefer a diet of canned puns. Now, as you get cozy, dim those lights, and turn on a fan that does its best to imitate a soft mountain breeze. Let your mind wander the backwoods of ever-so-sticky tape over your own cozy couch. Have you ever tried to trap a troublesome thought like a wayward beaver? Or wondered why a raccoon wearing something resembling a beret seems to be judging your snack choices? Did your ex ever sneak out in the middle of the night while you were just trying to enjoy a simple slice of pizza? Congratulations, you've stumbled into the rugged domain of 1831, but with fewer relationship complications and more bears lurking behind the trees. You've just woken up in 1831, the year when viral meant that your campfire stew had taken a turn for the worse, and bootlegging was a literal action, like sneaking an extra pair of boots past your buddy. Picture Bill, sprawled out on his bedroll like the world's most bedraggled starfish under the expansive canopy of night, blissfully unaware that he's the subject of a cosmic coyote conspiracy. Now, let's talk about Bill's setting. The night sky is more intricate than a quilting circle gone rogue. You see, the stars don't just hang there aimlessly. They're twinkling with significance, whispering secrets as wide as the Grand Canyon. The subtle cold, like the gentle caress of an old friend who may just have a hidden agenda, seeps through Bill's threadbare cloak, reminding him that he's one long, chilly night away from desperately seeking cover under a bear's backside, if push comes to shove. Meanwhile, the sounds around Bill present a mixed bag of nature's soundtrack. The rustling of leaves, the occasional hoot of an owl that sounds suspiciously like it's offering unsolicited life advice, and the distant howling of coyotes. Those coyotes are perhaps the furry philosophers of the frontier, plotting their next great scheme, or simply singing the ballads of their ridiculous rodent pursuits. And Bill, with a deep distrust of civilization, has come to believe there's an ongoing dialogue, a coyote cabal, if you will, debating the merits of boldly bawling out and performing gymnastics for unseen audiences. Ever hear a coyote laugh? Imagine a high-pitched giggle punctuated by a burp. That's your coyote conspiracy in action. Life as a mountain man isn't about mere survival, my friend. It's a performance art of existential dilemmas, from evading cunning creatures to pondering how to make delightful barter negotiations without resorting to shouting at your neighbor's chickens. Picture Bill, eyes locked on the twinkling cosmos, calculating whether he'd rather converse with a bear
or take his chances arguing with a fellow trapper over the last available salt lick. Spoiler alert, both options seem equally perilous. Bill thinks he might write a letter to the universe, or at least a haiku on the art of barter and celestial navigation. "Oh stars, oh fate, can I trade a beaver pelt for a warm embrace?" The real question, however, is whether a beaver pelt is as dynamic as a coyote's caper. At this point, even the stars above seem to smirk, twinkling with a sense of mischief that suggests they know more than they let on. But let's not forget that Bill has to keep track of the other residents of this midnight drama. The mountain men, rugged yet ironically vain, often vie for title of King of the Campfire, a contest decided by who can recite the most amusing fish tales, or more realistically, who can make the best stew from whatever isn't trying to eat you first. So you have a nightly gathering where the ambience is filled with laughter, back-patting, and the occasional shriek of a raccoon that snatched someone's rations. The art of mountain living involves not just trapping and hunting, but a level of social acrobatics that would make a circus ringmaster blush. Each evening, after a long day of snagging wayward trout or threatening bears with the fiercest scowl, Bill and his friends engage in hours of culinary improvisation. Echoes of "not the beans again" and "these mystery stew experiments will be the end of me" ring across the campfire, blending seamlessly with the conversations of critters performing their midnight show. Think So You Think You Can Dance, but starring a cast of suspiciously fat raccoons. With that, we bring you back to Bill and his celestial reflections. He's pulled into these absurd exchanges of survival, where the more beads of sweat dropped during a trade simulation is considered a badge of honor, while the quiet howl of the coyote reminds him that everything in life requires a little humor, and perhaps a generous serving of ridiculousness. So, as you meander through the olden woods with Bill, remember that the jokes about life on the frontier?
Timeless. Because if you can't laugh at your run-ins with difficult neighbors, dim-witted rodents, or dinner that deserves a warning label, you're probably better off trying to hug a bear instead.
Chapter 23. Billy's Pack. More than just a really tight backpack. Let's delve into the ins and outs of Billy's backpack, shall we? Imagine a well-worn leather pouch that's lived more lives than your average cat, stuffed with grimy odds and ends you wouldn't dare pull out during dinner with the in-laws. Yeah, it's that kind of pouch, one that tells stories, not just about where it's been, but who it's been with, and probably a few embarrassing tales about which raccoon decided to take a bite out of it when Billy wasn't looking. The leather is so cracked and creased that if it had a voice, it would likely echo with the regrets of every impulse decision Billy ever made. Like that time he decided a snowstorm would be the perfect environment for a bear snuggling competition. Spoiler, he lost, and so did his dignity. Picture that pouch hanging off a crudely fashioned strap, swaying gently like a drunken worm trying to find its way home, holding within it the contents that screamed self-reliance louder than a squirrel's mating call. Inside, tucked away with more care than Billy could muster, sits a hefty chunk of pemmican. Ah, pemmican, the supernatural concoction of dried meat and rendered fat. It's basically the survivalist's version of an energy bar, albeit one that smells suspiciously like a combination of gym socks and an old campfire. Imagine trying to describe it to a modern-day friend. Oh yeah, it's like if jerky and lard had a delightfully chewy baby. Unsurprisingly, it's not winning any Best Breakfast awards anytime soon. But don't let that deter you. In fact, pemmican has been known to stay edible longer than most relationships. So while your ex might be calling and reminding you of the good times, you can think back to the chunk of pemmican, stored away in your bags, patiently sitting there and saying, "I'm here for you, buddy. Not like that flake over there." Its resilience is nothing short of impressive. Next on the tour of essential mountain man gear is Billy's trusty fire steel. You know,
that fashionable piece of metal that transforms into a fiery drama queen with just a few deliberate strokes. Imagine Bill, rubbing that steel against tinder like a romantic trying to kindle a flame before a dinner date. And let's be honest, it often feels just as magical as pulling off a successful magic trick at a kid's birthday party. If you're not careful, the smoke can sneak up on you like an unexpected relative crashing on your couch. But when it works, oh boy, a campfire erupts into life like that one friend who shows up a little too enthusiastic to a party, setting the mood for stories, laughter, or just an awkward silence punctuated by someone's hiccup after 3 too many shots of homemade moonshine. And now, let's talk about Billy's well-used hunting knife, a slice of metal that's been more places and met more wild animal counterparts than any Tinder user in.
Their wildest dreams. This isn't just any knife. It sports the kind of dings and scrapes that a seasoned warrior would be proud of. The blade is about as sharp as your average grumpy postman's wit, capable of slicing through anything from fresh meat to, forgive me, your last nerve when Billy insists on telling that story about the raccoon that almost got his hat. Tone it down, Billy. But wait, the best part? Each of these tools not only represents a physical skill, they're also a testament to self-reliance. In 1831, being a mountain man wasn't just about having the best trapping skills. It was much more nuanced, like trying to navigate a particularly tricky board game before the advent of rules. Self-reliance meant finding a way to effectively juggle hardship, occasional bad decisions, hi Billy, and that bear, and a snack break in the midst of the wilderness. It's kind of like being an adult today, navigating your taxes while simultaneously trying to figure out if your coffee consumption counts as hydration. Every item in Billy's pack tells a story, a tale of survival, of ingenuity, or of running terrified from a particularly bold squirrel who mistook his pants for a chew toy. But amid the noises of nature, the owls offering unsolicited advice, the rustles of animals critiquing his life choices, you come to realize that every pack is a unique reflection of an individual's spirit. Hence, they all carry more sentimental value than your average abstract painting. In those moments when the day feels like an unending test and the wind whispers sweet nothings in your ear that sound suspiciously like you never should have gone camping, remember that each item is also a reminder of perseverance. Billy may not have access to the same tools of self-care we think about today, but trust me, a good chunk of pemmican and a well-worn knife can go a long way. And sometimes, all you need is just that one friend, or raccoon, who has your back. So next time you find yourself overwhelmed by life's curious complexities, be it dealing with your Zoom calls, your neighbors, or the fact that you just can't figure out how to get rid of that weird smell in your fridge, think of Billy in 1831. Remember that sometimes the simple life may seem more appealing than you'd expect, right until the moment a raccoon makes a run for your last cookie, and you realize, just like Billy, you might need to fend for yourself in more ways than one. Chapter 24. The frosty embrace of nature's most valuable mountain man skill. Hey guys, welcome back to the cozy corner of history, where frostbite gets a comedic twist. Tonight, we explore a chilling subject, not your run-of-the-mill iceberg or the cold shoulder from your last relationship, but the frosty trunk of an ancient pine tree standing sentinel over the desolate wilderness like a grumpy elder at a family reunion. So, dim the lights, grab your favorite blanket, preferably one that doesn't smell like a wet dog, and settle in for a tale about the American fur trade era, circa 1831. Now, let me ask you, have you ever tried to negotiate a deal while freezing your backside off? Or wondered what it's like to hug a tree for warmth because, hey, it's either that or enter a staring contest with a mountain lion? And what if that tree could talk? Would it offer solid advice or simply shake its branches in disapproval at your life choices? Well, congratulations.
You've just woken up in 1831, where your primary concern isn't refreshing your Instagram feed, but finding out if you can survive the next 24 hours in the great, frosty outdoors. Here, the most valuable skill for a mountain man isn't trapping fuzzy critters to make a stylish hat. No, it's about embracing the harsh realities of nature, like cozying up to a tree and hoping it won't judge you as harshly as your last Tinder date did. As you venture into this wilderness, raw and rugged, you reach out, fingers brushing against the rough, frost-covered trunk of an ancient pine. Feel that texture? It's like the world's worst exfoliator, one that not only refuses to give you glowing skin, but also covers you in shavings that cling desperately to your clothes, like a cat hair you can't shake off during a job interview. The pine tree's bark is a frozen diary, etched with stories of icy winters and winds that could pierce the very fabric of your soul. Let's pause for a moment. What sounds do these woods make? The wind howling is the nature equivalent of your favorite aunt trying to convince you to settle down. You could almost hear it whispering, "Why aren't you married yet? Look at this tree. It's been dating its companions for 100 years." Each gust sends shivers down your spine as you picture the tiny squirrels inside the tree having their own drama-crammed gossip session about your life choices. But don't be foolish. It's not all about stark landscapes and tree romances. In a place like this, survival means mastering the art of self-reliance, which is basically adulting on steroids. You reach for a small bundle of twigs to start a fire. Imagine trying to rub those wretched sticks together like a romance novel heroine trying to ignite a spark. Except, instead of seduction, you're praying to the gods of warmth and hoping you don't knock your chin against a rock in frustration. Of course, there's a lesson in the cold. You learn quickly that the value of having an ample supply of firewood is like the modern-day equivalent of having a fully stocked pantry and a Netflix subscription during a snowstorm. Which leads to an existential question. Are we hoarding more snacks than firewood nowadays? Just imagine the woes of a mountain man trying to balance his supply of jerky and kindling in a game of wilderness Tetris, while hoping the nearest bear isn't sniffing around for snacks. Now, imagine that chilly air wrapping around you like an overenthusiastic hug from a relative. You can taste the sharpness against your tongue, biting like the last piece of an ill-fated gingerbread house you thought would last through the holidays. I should have known, you sigh, feeling more like a reluctant snowman than a rugged mountain man, adorned with layers of clothing and a hat resembling a hedgehog. As you stand next to the ancient pine, absorbing its strength and resilience, you can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. This tree has withstood more winters than you've had hot dinners. It's the kind of steadfast presence that throws shade, literally, in the best possible way. If only it could just shelter you from harsh critiques along with its branches. And yes, in your heart of hearts, you know there's a tree pun waiting to blossom. What's a mountain man's favorite snack? Barkleys, you muse to yourself, grinning at the frost accumulating on the ground like confetti from a party long over. Ah, the ruggedness of survival. Nothing beats the satisfaction of getting a lean-to together after hours of shaking your frozen fingers in frustration and muttering at nature for testing your patience. You realize this is what builds character, or perhaps just frostbite, depending on how optimistic you feel about tomorrow's prospects. In this time where self-reliance reigns supreme, each day brings new challenges, but also an abundance of hilarious anecdotes, like the time you mistook a porcupine for a dinner guest. Spoiler alert, the dinner guest had quite the prickly personality. As you pat the icy trunk one last time, grateful for its steadfastness, you can't help but wonder if you'll ever reach the point where your own personal resilience could rival that of an ancient tree. But alas, until you can sprout branches of your own, you'll just have to keep burrowing into the dirt like a squirrel looking for acorns, hoping they don't get tangled in yet another unfortunate tickle from nature's gentle embrace. And with that thought, you resign yourself back into a wintry dreamscape, awaiting the next adventure with both laughter and a healthy dose of frost. Chapter 25. The Frosty Horizon of Existence. Hey guys, welcome back to the snowy landscape of historical hilarity, where the mountains stand taller than your laundry pile and your sense of optimal comfort. Tonight's feature is all about nature's grand design, those majestic, snow-capped peaks that loom over the American fur trade era in 1831. Think of them as nature's version of annoying relatives. We can't escape them, but at least they provide a great backdrop for our inevitable failures and disasters. Before we dive into this enchanting desolation, let's take a moment to think about how unprepared you might feel for a life as a mountain man. Ever tried to pack a suitcase for a weekend getaway, only to realize you have one sock and a nagging belief that you forgot something important? Now multiply that anxiety by roughly 10. Imagine yourself in the wilderness, where your biggest worries include whether you'll catch dinner or, whether you'll get caught having dinner with an actual bear because the fish were too slippery. And let's not even start on how you'd negotiate your way out of awkward social situations under a canopy of pine trees rather than at the office water cooler. Have you ever pondered if a grizzly bear would give you a better pep talk than your high school gym coach? Congrats on your upgrade. You've just woken up in 1831, when nature was less of a friend and more of a cunning adversary. As dawn breaks over the rugged horizon, you find yourself in a sacred cathedral of peaks, tall, snow-capped, and daring you to forget about your laundry piles. The colors shift from the dark blues of night to a soft blush as the sun rises, casting golden rays that make you feel simultaneously insignificant and overly emotional about the universe. It's like that moment when your favorite jam comes on the radio unexpectedly. You're filled with gratitude and existential dread all at once. Imagine standing amidst these titans, with the pine-scented air curling around you like an old friend who can't decide whether to hug or poke you nervously. The snow at your feet crunches with an exaggerated sound, every step echoing louder than your last embarrassing moment during a Zoom call. You encounter a view that feels so infinite, you could almost convince yourself it transcends your mundane worries about lying awake thinking about whether you locked the door. But hold your horses, or rather, your sled dogs. You're not simply there for the view or to contemplate your life choices. You're here to thrive in the wild, which isn't as glamorous as the movies make it appear. The biting air sets a chill deep in your bones, kind of like that last cold email you were brave enough to send, only to have your boss read it aloud during a meeting. Yes, it's just that cold. Now, let's talk about the lingering scent of wood smoke swirling up into the crisp air. It's comforting until you realize that every other person
Within a mile is trying to hunt down their breakfast the same way you're contemplating whether to give up on adulting and just start a squirrel commune. That woodsy smell brings back memories of home, or at least a distant patch of civilization where warm sandwiches and takeout coffee exist. This landscape breathes life in slow cycles, showing off the eternal battles between earth and sky like a dramatic reenactment of your awkward teenage years at a high school play. The clouds drift lazily, whispering about the mysteries hovering over the peaks. You almost feel like you're about to discover something profound, like how the best way to start a fire isn't just that nifty Tinder app you downloaded while the city was still on lockdown. Now picture this. You glance at the trees, their branches frosted white, and you can't help but wonder if they've thrown themselves into this frozen masquerade for pure showmanship. Are they trying to impress the peaks across the way? Look at my branches. They're trimmed beautifully in ice. Take that, weather. Meanwhile, the mountains stand stoic, like that one cousin who never laughs at family feuds, just gazes on with slight amusement, silently judging the entire picnic. Out here, every moment feels poignant, like a philosophical essay you forgot to write back in college, yet every second is laced with a layer of absurdity. Have you ever tried capturing an epic view, but ended up accidentally filming your finger instead? Congratulations, this is your life in a nutshell. Grandiosity and immense, unfiltered humor.
The contrast between man and nature is as stark as your mood on a Monday morning versus a Saturday night. You might find a snowdrift that resembles a fluffy marshmallow, only to discover that it's just as hard and unforgiving as your attempts to break up with Netflix. And yes, somewhere beneath the majestic, cold splendor is the engaging thought: you might actually kind of love it here. So, as you rock back on your heels and look around, realize you're part of something profound and hilariously outdated. Every rustle in the underbrush, every frost-laden branch is a reminder that while you're here to ruggedly survive, you're also hopelessly bumbling through nature's chaotic comedy show. Welcome to your snowy prelude to laughter, weary mountain man. You're doing great, despite the fact you might just step on the family of porcupines that thought they were having a private meeting in your path. Embrace the absurdity, my friend, and remember, nature's greatest lesson is that life can be intimidating, teeth-chattering cold, and utterly ridiculous all at once, just like navigating that frozen stretch of ice in front of you, hoping your balance holds as you go tumbling. Like a historic slapstick comedy unfolding one step at a time, As our journey through the icy ridgelines and chaotic campfires of frontier life winds down, take a moment to breathe deeply and settle into the warmth of your blanket. Tonight, we walked beside mountain men who woke up colder than leftover stew, wrestled with stubborn boots, negotiated with bears, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, and survived days that were equal parts danger, comedy, and sheer confusion. Their world was a constant balance of hunger, frostbite, questionable cooking, and the hilarity of simply trying to exist without being eaten by something with claws. But beneath all the absurdity, one truth kept glowing like a small fire in a snowstorm: their resilience. These men endured storms that erased the horizon, loneliness that echoed through the pines, and challenges that pushed the limits of human grit. They survived not because life was kind, but because they learned to meet hardship with patience, humor, and the quiet determination to keep going, step by difficult, freezing step. And as we reflect on their struggles, their discomforts, and their often unintentional comedy, it's hard not to feel a wave of gratitude for the simple luxuries we take for granted: soft beds, hot meals, clean clothes, a thermostat. The miracle of not having to negotiate breakfast with a wolf. The comforts that feel ordinary to us would have seemed like pure magic to them. So let your shoulders drop. Let your breath slow. Let the world grow quiet around you. You've wandered through the cold, the chaos, and the laughter of another time. And now you get to drift into sleep in a warm, safe space those mountain men could only dream of. Good night, my friend. Rest deeply. The wilderness will still be here in the morning.